In the stone world, there is only one rule: everything has a scientific explanation. Senku Ishigami has spent years rebuilding civilization with logic and chemise. But his entire worldview is about to be shattered. When a second moon appears in the sky, it isn't a celestial body, it's a golden sphere carrying a man who ignores the laws of physics. Naruto Uzumaki has arrived, and he doesn't need formulas to revive the dead. He has magic. How does the world's greatest scientist handle a man who can rewrite reality with a single hand sign? Let's find out. Kohaku was bored. No, isn't all of this just boring old rocks? Kohaku, a 16-year-old warrior, thought as she watched the man who saved her from dying under a tree, and her village's sorcerer, King out over a bunch of rocks that was in the sorcerer's little hut. Senku, the one who saved her, and Chrome, the one that she knew well enough. They were freaking out in excitement over rocks. This one is crazy hard, yo. I can't tell. Kohaku blinked when she heard a loud noise in the distance, and she wasn't the only one that stopped what she was doing. Senku and Chrome stopped freaking out when they heard the sound as well. What was that? Chrome scratched the side of his head. I don't know, that isn't a sound I've ever heard before. Senku stated as he looked at the two village guards that were standing nearby. And he glanced at Kohaku as well. She just shrugged her shoulders, since she didn't know what the sound had been. Kinro, those were your names right as guards, have you ever heard anything like that? Senku stepped out of the hut to see what the guards had to say. He was met with silence, but he completely understood as he looked up. A giant yellow sphere had appeared in the sky. It was glowing brighter than the sun, and it was shimmering as something started to appear inside of the sphere. What is that? Chrome whispered as he looked up. That's a moon. Senku responded as he watched a moon appearing in the day's sky, but it clearly wasn't natural. He rubbed his eyes. A hallucination. Senku looked at the others who seemed to also be able to see the same thing as him. And he saw not a single person seemed to see something different. The planet shook. The golden sphere around the moon vanished when the moon fully materialized in the sky, and then just as quickly as the moon appeared, something happened. It exploded. The moon that appeared in the sky exploded with enough force that the planet was shaken from it, and the ocean churned itself up. Hurricane force winds blew through downwards towards them, and just as quickly as the moon appeared, it was gone. What was that? Kinro asked Chrome. What kind of sorcery was that? Kinro pointed his spear at Senku, who ignored it in favor of just looked up towards the sky. He wasn't the only one. Chrome was speechless as he stared up into the sky in the same way. This has never happened in the history of mankind. A moon just appearing and exploding. How did it appear? What blew it up? The amount of force needed, the amount of energy required. What did I just witness? It makes no sense. Senku stared up towards the sky. A glint. Something is falling down towards the ocean. Kohaku stated as she looked at the sky, and all of them could see something massive and yellow falling down towards the planet from the sky. It was heading right towards the ocean. Senku, what kind of sorcery was that? Kohaku questioned the man. He didn't have an answer. Now with his own eyes he could see what Kohaku had seen. It changed direction. It changed directions. It's heading this way. Everyone, brace for impact. At the speed that thing is falling, it's going to unleash a massive shockwave when it hits the ground. Grab a tree and brace yourself. Senku ran over towards a tree and he grabbed onto it, and the others followed his lead. They watched as the giant yellow thing smashed into a nearby mountain. The mountain shattered, and it rang out with a loud booming noise. Before whatever hit the mountain landed in the forest and they could feel the ground shaking as more great winds impacted them. Senku couldn't hold onto the tree, and was blasted off of it. In that moment, Kohaku grabbed his wrist and kept him from being blasted away completely. The shockwaves released lessened greatly after a few minutes. And the mountain that had been erased was right next to a massive crater in the land. Standing in that crater was something incredible. A god. Ginro whispered as he dropped his spear. And dropped to his knees. No way, that isn't scientific at all. Senku was sweating as he looked at what was standing in the crater. It was a giant fox with 9 tails, standing at over 1,000 meters tall at its full height, and its body seemed to be made out of pure golden flames with black markings around it. It was a giant half-humanoid fox creature with 9 tails that swung behind it with confidence. A deity has descended. Kinro dropped his weapon like his brother. He brought his forehead to the ground. Screams of people could be heard in the village as they too, even from a further distance, could see the massive deity that had descended from the heavens to the earth. Kohaku looked at her dagger and shield, and she looked at the giant in the distance. The giant fox was moving its head to look around at the area. Something that size shouldn't be able to support its own weight, not with legs shaped like that. That creature shouldn't be able to exist. And how is it made up of? Is it connected to the petrification of humanity? Senku's mind was creating hundreds of theories, and his mind landed on the green light that he had experienced so many years ago that petrified him. Was this giant creature somehow related to the petrification of humanity at that time, and came back to Earth to finish the job now that people were being freed? Whatever it was, they couldn't fight it. If it managed to survive crash landing from orbit, and with its size, not even the weapons of humanity before it was petrified would have been able to injure this creature. Everyone lower your heads. It might not have seen us. It seems to be 17.45 kilometers away at the moment. It shouldn't be able to see us. We're too small for it to notice us. Senku ordered everyone around him. And they ran to the trees and hid themselves, but they could still see the giant in the distance. Senku looked towards the village that was nearby, and he looked back towards the giant as it looked around. With its size, with any luck it wouldn't notice such a small village. He calculated its size and the distance. What do we do if it does notice us? Do you think we can take it down? Kohaku whispered as she shook with fear. No, but we can evacuate into the forest. Something that large, at that size, shouldn't be able to move quickly. Its bones would snap under its own weight. Senku described. Everyone froze. The giant fox looked towards them. Not in their generation direction, but the giant fox looked directly at them as if it knew exactly where they were standing. They could feel the fact that it was them the titan fox looked towards, and it turned to face them with its entire body. Ru. Senku couldn't finish what he was saying. The giant fox appeared in front of them. It was so fast that it crossed the distance between them in a mere moment, faster than Senku could finish saying the word, run. Now that it was right above them, they could see just how much of a titan the creature truly was. Please, mighty Kyubi, please spare us. I'll offer myself as your devoted servant. Ginro collapsed, bowed with his arms out in prayer. There is a person, Aku whispered as she looked up through the fox, and she saw a person standing inside of the fox's head. The flames the fox was made up of started to retreat, and faded away. She looked at Senku, and his eyes widened when a human dropped out of the air and landed on the ground in front of them. It was a man, male, age maybe 18 to 23,180 centimeters tall. And why am I analyzing him? His body is made out of the same material as the fox. And he has the same black patterns the fox had. If this guy was the fox, or the fox was an extension of him, then that means this guy was on that moon when Senku stopped what he was thinking. A girl. The man was holding a girl in his arms. Dear God, please be merciful to us, we didn't mean for Chrome's sorcery to anger you. Ginro assumed as he continued to bow his head up and down. Oh shit. Yeah, sorry if my sorcery offended you. Chrome bowed as well when he realized what might have caused the god to appear. A girl, Chrome whispered when he noticed. A girl who had her body half covered with blood. Are any of you a doctor? I'm not a doctor, but she's dead. Senku looked away as he saw the girl in the man's arms wasn't breathing, and her body was soaked with her own blood. She had several stones through her chest and gut, and burns all across her body. He could tell that she had died almost instantly, so she must have been on the moon with the man when it exploded. He must had tried to protect her the best that he could, but she still got hit by the blast. The man's body stopped glowing. I sensed people nearby, so I tried to land here to save her, but you're right. The man closed his eyes and wiped his tears, and he walked over to a nearby tree, and gently sat the girl's corpse against it. He closed her open eyes, and he kissed her forehead. You're back. Yeah, but I'll be okay. The man had a giant stone spike that was lodged in his back, piercing his body. The man slammed his hand into his chest, and the spike came out of his back and landed on the ground. The wound was larger than Kohaku's head, and deep enough that the other side of his clothes could be seen. He said he would be okay, but that kind of wound was impossible to survive. He should be dead, just like the woman he tried to save. What the sorcery? Kinro whispered. The man's back started to heal as the organs and bones in his chest regrew, and his flesh mended itself. It took seconds for his body to go from injured to completely healed. Senku was at a loss for words. The amount of energy and calories it would take no even. More than that healing was not even creatures that can heal any part of their body can heal that fast. Senku saw that the man was in good condition now, even though his clothes were torn and he had what may have been fully body injuries. I tried to save her and the others, but everyone else half their bodies destroyed when the moon exploded and I barely managed to stop her from getting turned to dust. So where am I? Before that, who are you? Are you a deity, a god come from the heavens? Kinro glanced to his spear on the ground, and he made eye contact with Kohaku. She didn't have her weapons raised. And they all looked at Senku. Did this foreign sorcerer summon you here? Kinro asked as he pointed at Senku. I am Naruto, and what the hell is sorcery? Where am I? I'm clearly not on my home planet. Before it blew up, I noticed that this planet looks different than the one I was on before, so what is this planet called and why are there so few people here? Naruto scared as he looked around for some explanations. Are you an alien? No, I'm a human, and I'm from the planet Earth. More specifically, I'm from the land of fire in the elemental nations. I'm not some alien or deity, so don't bow to me. I'm not here by choice, and I don't mean any of you any harm. Naruto stated, much to the relief of the people who had been alarmed by his appearance. Kohaku stepped forward. Humans don't glow and turn into giant foxes. Kohaku pointed out. He is a human, I'll bet he's a human from a world where technology is so advanced that it appears that he has magic power. Senku realized what he was seeing. Science that couldn't be explained was no different than magic. This man that seemed to be magic just had science on a level they couldn't even imagine. Listen, can whatever this is wait until later? I want to bury my friend. I'll answer whatever questions you have later. I could only sense a few settlements of humans on this planet, but I'm going to guess none of you can help me get back home. Naruto sighed to himself. Settlements plural. Yeah. That village there, some people over there, a small village of people on a nearby island, and a group of people on a continent in that direction. Naruto pointed to the various groups of humans that he could sense were active and moving around. None of the ground were all that large or impressive, but one had been the closest group of humans to him, so he changed directions to try and get help from them. He had hoped beyond hope that Hinata could have been saved, that maybe the people of this world had magical abilities to save her. His hope had been dashed quickly. Senku was grinning. There were more people out there after all. Would you like help burying her? Chrome asked with sympathy. Burying Ruri. Kohaku stepped forward and grabbed Naruto by the sleeve, and she looked up at him. You have magic sorcery powers, can you heal diseases? My sister is dying, and if you can heal her, I'll do anything to help you in return. Kohaku didn't know how this man worked, but if he could help her sister, she had to try. Naruto frowned. With his level of technology, if he could cure your sister, he would have saved. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but if she's just sick, you can have this. Naruto reached into the pouch on his pants and he pulled out a few small brown pills. He handed one of them to Kohaku, who stared down at it like it was gold. It might help her. One of these can give a person 3 days worth of energy, and it is filled with all the nutrients a body needs, and it is absorbed by the body instantly when you eat it. If her body is struggling to fight off a sickness, this should give her immune system the boost it needs. Naruto looked at her. That doesn't make sense. How can this be 3 days worth of? Senku picked up one of the pills, and it wasn't all that dense or heavy. If it had that much in it, it should have been much heavier than he was holding. Is this even safe for the people of our world to eat? Senku looked towards Naruto, who shrugged. I do have healing abilities that can heal others, but right now I'm extremely weakened. I just kind of hoped you people could have helped me. Naruto judged himself. How weakened are you exactly? I'll say I'm at about 2% power right now. Before this I had most of my power drained, and I UGHT a really powerful guy that drained more of my power, and then I had to focus a lot of power to survive. Naruto could sense that Kurama inside of him had been severely injured, and had used a ton of chakra to heal himself as well. He couldn't heal other people right now. It will take me a good night's sleep and a hearty meal to fully recover. I can't heal anyone but myself right now, but I can heal others after that. Naruto stated. You're at 2%, Kinro picked up his spear, and he frowned. 2% was super weak. Then, as a danger to the village, you can't take a step closer. Kinro Nned wicked confidence as he lunged into action with his brother. Naruto caught their spears with one hand, catching Kinro's spear between thumb and index finger, and he caught Ginro's spear between his pinky and ring finger. He gripped his hand into a fist, and shattered the stone heads of the spears with ease. All joking aside, right now I'm barely even at 2%, so I can't really heal anyone else but myself. Naruto ignored the two that attacked him as they looked at their shattered spears. Naruto punched a tree with his free hand, and shattered the trunk of the tree, and the tree behind that tree shattered as well. Actually, I might be at least than 1% right now. If I was at 2% that would have caused a lot more destruction. Naruto frowned at himself. I see, Kohaku covered an ear when the trees that fell hit the ground, and she looked at the others. Chrome gulped. 1% my ass, he's bluffing. No, he isn't bluffing. His body, it isn't naturally tough, it's supernaturally powerful. I don't even think 100 copies of Tsukasa would be able to beat this guy. He's extremely powerful, unnaturally so, and he's an asset. Senku grinned. Naruto looked at him. Naruto sighed. I'm going to go and mourn my friends now. So just leave me alone. Listen, girl, if that medicine saves your sister or whatever, let me know. If it doesn't, I'll see what I can do to help her out myself. Just leave me alone while I bury her. Naruto went back to Hinata and picked her up, before he started to walk away from them into the forest. Kohaku grabbed his arm. You're sure this will save her? No, I'm really not sure, but if you can save Ruri, I'm begging you. I'll bury your friend for you, and I'll be super respectful, but please, if you have the power to save Ruri, isn't saving life more important than? Chrome dropped to his knees. Naruto smiled sadly at him. You love this Ruri girl, you really do. Now that's a look I recognize. I just lost the girl I love, so yeah, I'll go with the girl here and see what I can do to help. Her name is Hinata, and I love her the same way you love this Ruri girl, so when you bury her, I know you'll treat her body with respect. Naruto reached down and rubbed the top of Chrome's head, before he nodded to Kohaku and followed her when she started to walk towards the village. When you get back, I have so many questions about where you are from. And this technology you use to look like you have magic. Senku called out to Naruto. Naruto didn't care about any of that. You'll really help my sister? Kohaku asked Naruto. Yeah, I'll help her. Losing a loved one sucks. And losing the woman you love is pure agony. Naruto glanced back at Chrome when the man started to dig a hole in the ground with his bare hands. For what it's worth, I don't know a thing about that girl Hinata, but if she loved you, she picked a good man, I can tell. I'm sure she's happy you survived whatever it is that happened. Kohaku looked up into Naruto's eyes when she saw it. And he smiled down at her. His heart was sore. Still, that compliment meant a lot to him. Her clothes look super primitive, and low quality, so this world must be pretty well it do. Essence seem like these people have advanced very far beyond using rocks as weapons. Naruto thought back to the two warriors who attacked him with primitive stone spears. He doubted that the girl that was sick had anything worse than a flu. Or maybe she had some kind of pneumonia at worst if she was still alive at the moment. So girl, my name is Kohaku, isn't it rude to keep calling me girl? You can't be much older than me. I'll be turning 17 this year. Kohaku told him, and Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Okay then, sorry for not asking. Naruto looked at the village they were approaching. Super primitive. So how old are you? Kohaku asked out of pure curiosity. I turned 19 a few months ago, so I guess we aren't that far apart in age. Sorry again for not asking your name, really rude of me. Naruto apologized again, since he was not in the right mindset for dealing with people right now. He was tired and hungry, and weakened from his battles, as well as surviving what he had been forced to survive. 19 not even 20, and you've attained this amount of strength, so much that you could defeat Ginro and Kinro while weakened, so much that's amazing. Kohaku complimented him. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Are they that strong? If you were to rank out power by points, I would be given 1000 points, the next strongest guy in the village is about 700 points, Kinro is 500 points, Ginro is 100 points. That guy Senku, the one with tall hair, would be 3 points, and Chrome would be 5 points. I could easily take down Kinro and Ginro too, but not as easily as you did it. Kohaku could only call both of the people Naruto didn't consider a threat to be nothing less than strong. They are the village guards. Huh, Naruto was a little surprised. Those who were just so weak though. Was that what this world called strong? The village was barely a village. Not counting elderly and children, there were only 40 able-bodied people in the village, one less when considering that the priestess of the village was barely holding on to her life. Outsider, you claim to be able to heal my daughter. The village chief Kokuyo asked as he pointed a spear at Naruto, just for a safety precaution. Naruto wasn't offended by people considering him a threat, with the way he was dressed it made sense. His clothes were from a different dimension, and a world years ahead of this one in clothing quality. He doubted this man's stone spear would even be able to pierce his jacket. It was easy to brush off the fear of somebody who couldn't hurt you. Naruto was in his house. Ruri was beautiful. And she had the same face as Kohaku, the same blonde hair as well, and shining blue eyes. She was a stunning beauty of 18 years old, so it wasn't surprising to say that she was somebody that any person could easily be attracted to. And white people would surely miss her if she passed away. I didn't say I could, just that I would try. If I can figure out what she has, I'll know if my medicine can help her. Naruto had her pull her top down to her waist to reveal her chest to him, and he had his left hand on her left breast as he closed his eyes. He could feel her heart beating, and with his hand on her boob. He was able to feel the sound of her lungs as well. He wasn't a doctor, but just going by the way his heart sounded, and the way the hearts of others he had felt sounded, she didn't have anything wrong with her heart. Her heart is healthy, but her lungs feel weird. Naruto stated as he took his hand off of her chest. She was blushing, rightfully so. So, Kohaku frowned. Well, with a healthy heart. There won't be an issue with her taking the pill at least. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, but I was good friends with one. Naruto pulled Ruri forward so that her back was exposed. And he placed the side of his head down against her spine, so close that his ear was right against her muscle. As she breathed in, the feeling of the sound earlier became more clear to him. Kohaku, can you come here too? Naruto asked. Sure. Kohaku approached and sat down, and she turned her back to him as she pulled her top down to below her navel, and he placed his ear against her back. Kohaku had healthy lungs. Ruri did not. Well, her lungs have fluid in them, so she doesn't have the flu or a cold at least. I'm going to guess she has pneumonia. Naruto put his head back up again. Ruri as she started to cough from breathing too hard, and he could hear a sloshing sound in her lungs as the fluid tried and failed to escape. He really was not a doctor, and all of his knowledge due. Saint came from Sakura complaining about patients at the hospital she worked at when she wasn't going on missions. Pneumonia. Kohaku tilted her head. Some kind of evil curse. Kokuyo frowned as he dropped to his knees. Doctor, can you heal her? I'm not a doctor, and soldier pills can help most likely. It might work, but if she isn't strong enough, it might not work. These pills supply the body with 3 days' worth of nutrients. Boost the body's metabolism to insane heights, and cause the heart to beat extremely fast so that the body is flooded with energy. Naruto explained as he held up the small pill. But, Ruri asked when she stopped coughing. But your body might not be strong enough to handle it. Pneumonia is in the lungs, and it would really hurt, but I do have a method to brute force this disease out of you. I don't want to do it though, because you'll experience a lot of pain. Naruto had a sick and twisted method that he could fix her with. He could shove a finger into her lung and use boil release to release hot steam into her lungs, killing the bacteria, but she would feel like she was drowning. The hole he poked in her would cause her pain, and the fluids in her lungs would loosen so much that she would cough them all out. It would be extremely unpleasant for her, and it would not exactly be fun for him to shove his finger into the body of a young woman or anyone for that matter. So you do have a medicine, doctor. Kokuyo reached out and grabbed Naruto's sleeve. A little pain, to cure my sickness. I think I can handle it. Ruri smiled weakly at Naruto. Her face was pale and there was shadows under her eyes when one gazed closely enough. Kohaku saw the way Naruto winced when little was said. It isn't just a little pain, is it? Kohaku frowned. It will feel like your lungs are burning. And like you are drowning. It isn't going to be a little pain. It's going to be so much pain you might prefer to die, but it should work, but I really just suggest trying a soldier pill. Naruto handed her the pill. So, just swallow the pill. Kokuyo asked as he looked at the one that Kohaku had handed him. Well, you bite it first so that it breaks apart. Naruto watched as Ruri tossed it into her mouth without another word. Chalk. Owie, that hurt, it didn't break. Ruri opened her mouth and the unbroken pill came out, and Kohaku picked it up off the ground. And she put it right in her mouth, and tried to break it with her teeth so that she could give the broken pill to Ruri. Chalk. What is this made of? Rock. Kohaku spat the unbroken pill out when she tried to break it and failed with her teeth as well. Naruto picked the pill up off the ground, and he wiped the spit of the two girls off of it. It's 3 days worth of nutrients and medicine in one pill. Of course it's going to be hard to break. Naruto sighed to himself, since the people of this world seemed to just not have the jaw strength needed to break apart the pill. So, he crushed the pill between his fingers. And handed the crushed pieces to Ruri for her to swallow. The second she did swallow, the reaction was instant. Thankfully, when she tried to stand up to run around, her body filled with energy. Naruto grabbed her by the shoulder and kept her sitting down. She was breathing fast and heavy as her body rushed into overtime, and once the medicine took instant effect. Her body started to heat up as she got a fever. Her heart was beating faster than it ever had in her life, and her eyes were looking around the room in excitement as she experienced more of a high than ever before. Yeah, good thing he only gave her a small pill. A large one would have killed her for sure. Whoa, I feel so filled with power and life. Look at me. Ruri started to cough with more power than ever before, as well as fluid came out of her mouth, her overcharged lungs squeezing tighter than ever before with each cough. Her father rushed to her side, but Naruto kept him back as well as. He looked at the girl choking on the fluid coming out of her, only to completely cough it out as if she were throwing up. Gack, it tastes. Then she just threw up. She coughed out fluid so hard that she actually caused her body to throw up, which wasn't pleasant for her or anyone in the room. Naruto stopped Kohaku from going to her though, as she kept having a fit on her futon. She's having a bad reaction, we need to help her. Kohaku shouted. No, she's having the right reaction. Her body is fighting the disease harder than it's ever been able to fight. Her immune system is destroying all the bacteria in her lungs. And her body is expelling all the fluid. This just isn't going to be pleasant for her to watch. Naruto explained as he shivered in disgust when she switched between throwing up and coughing out fluid. Soldier pills are instantly effective, super medicine, but they aren't actually used for treating sickness. They are used for exhausted warriors to fight for days on end. Ruri is not a warrior. Naruto explained as he reached out and slapped her gently on the back to help her clear her airway. So she's healing, she'll be better. Kokuyo was very excited. Yeah, she'll be better almost instantly once her body kills all the bacteria and gets the fluid out, and then she's going to get really, really annoying. Naruto was glad that he didn't need to brute force her disease with impromptu surgery. But boy, was this going to not be pleasant. These pills keep a warrior fighting for 3 days and nights. Ruri is not going to be able to sleep for at least 3 days, and she's going to be super wired. Like she has been drinking coffee non-stop. Naruto explained. Coffee. Kohaku had never heard that term. Never heard of it before. Kokuyo agreed with his youngest daughter. Wow, you people really are. Naruto was going to say underdeveloped, but then he would be the rude one. Whoa, I feel great. Ruri jumped to her feet when she was done throwing up everything in her body. But this time Naruto didn't stop her. He watched as she went running out of the building and into the village. Ruri, don't run. We don't know if you're healed yet. Is she healed? Kohaku asked Naruto, unsure as she watched her dad run after her sister. Naruto stood up and got the dust off of his shins, before he nodded his head. Kohaku looked like she was going to cry, so when Naruto stood up, she stood up as well and hugged him. Thank you for healing my sister. I know I was asking a lot, but I thought if anyone could heal her, it would be the guy who could heal himself like you did. Naruto rubbed the back of her head gently, before he pushed her off, and he saw the happy tears in her eyes. Well, my ability to heal myself was kind of bad logic on your part, and it's just lucky that I'm good friends with a loudmouth doctor and that I always carry some soldier pills with me. Naruto didn't say any of this out loud, because Kohaku was having a sweet moment, and he didn't want to ruin it. He nodded again and smiled down at Kohaku, before he zipped his jacket back up. Well, it smells like vomit in here, so I'm going to step out for some air. I'm going to check on Chrome. A little later. Thank you. I didn't think you would want her covered in blood when I buried her, so I washed the blood off and changed her clothes, and I bandaged her wounds. I hope you're okay with that. Chrome looked away as he watched Naruto gently lowering Hinata into the hole that he had dug for her. Hinata was wearing a different outfit, and all the blood on her body had been washed away, leaving most of her skin looking clean. What couldn't be cleaned was bandaged up underneath the new clothes. He did the best he could to make her as presentable as possible, so that when she was buried he would be showing both her and Naruto the most respect that he could show. Thank you. Naruto just repeated that. You're not mad at me. No, Hinata didn't like violence. I'm sure she would much rather be buried in civilian clothes than the clothes she wore into battle. She looks beautiful, so thank you, Chrome. Naruto reached out and grabbed Chrome by the shoulder, before pulling him into a one-armed hug. He gripped the young man's shoulder tightly, before he let go completely. Naruto took a soldier pill as well and restored a small part of his strength, before he placed his chakra into Hinata. The wounds on her body healed. She was still dead, but her wounds had been healed. I thought you said you couldn't heal. Chrome stopped. I forgot I could take a soldier pill. I wasn't thinking straight, but it wouldn't have changed anything. At least, I don't want to bury her, covered in wounds. I want to bury her whole. Shukaku, can you? Naruto whispered. He felt Shukaku manipulate his chakra, and sand started to fill the hole on the ground for him as it surrounded her body. Hinata was no longer visible within moments, and a cursed seal appeared on top of the ground where she was buried. What was that? Chrome asked. Just to make sure no animals will dig her up. Anything that touches that sand won't be able to move until something else moves it off of the sand. Naruto explained, and he left it at that. He didn't want anything disturbing her body, since there would be no coffin to bury her in. If he couldn't protect her body with that, then he would use Shukaku to make sand protect her then. Microscopic machines that can control the sand, that's some amazing tech. Senku chimed in as he climbed down the ladder to Chrome's hut. Micro what now? Chrome asked. Microscopic machines. I'll bet each machine is no longer than 1/10 of a grain of sand. I'll be honest, seeing your tech in action has me 10 billion% excited. Senku was grinning with a visible shaking excitement. Naruto blinked. He had no clue what this guy was talking about. Whoa, that is so bad. Chrome was super excited too when he heard how Senku explained it to him. And he crouched down on the ground and brought his eyes centimeters away from the sand. So you're saying that tiny things even smaller than sand is controlling the sand? That's amazing. Yeah, and with this level of tech, I'm sure our dear friend Naruto won't have any issues protecting us from Tsukasa. I'm not protecting you from anyone, not if you don't pay me. Naruto interrupted Senku as he spoke. I have no money. Okay. If you can't protect me, then I guess I won't protect you. I only protect my friends, and people who pay me, and you aren't my friend, and you can't pay me also. I don't think I really like you that much. Naruto had absolutely no reason at all to side with Senku. Well, I'm hungry, and I want to be alone. I'm going to see if the village will feed me, and then I'm going to spend some time alone. If you want my protection, you better find some way to pay me. Naruto started to walk off. With that said, Senku was sweating. Did I just make an enemy? No, I don't consider you an enemy. But you give off a really bad, this guy is a scumbag, kind of aura, so I just won't have much to do with you if I don't benefit from it. I don't really like hanging out with scumbags. Naruto shouted back at Senku. He heard you whisper. Does that guy have super hearing or something? Chrome whispered even lower. He must have augmented, micro hearing aids or something. Naruto rolled his eyes as he continued to walk away. This Senku guy seemed to have a hard time admitting that he was supernatural. So, 6 days passed. You really aren't going to enter the tournament? Meant to win Ruri's hand in marriage then? Kohaku asked Naruto as she climbed up to the roof of the home she lived in, where Naruto was laying down with his eyes closed. Since Ruri was cured, it was decided that the tournament that would decide her future husband would be held in 4 weeks. Kohaku wasn't allowed to enter this time. Only men between the ages of 10 and 25 were allowed to enter the tournament to decide who would marry Ruri. Though nobody under the age of 15 had actually entered, and nobody older than 22 had entered. She had hoped that Naruto would enter, if only so that he could refuse to marry her sister at the end of it, since he had no interest in marrying another woman at this time. It's not my business, I'm thankful for your village letting me stay, but I'm not one of you. Naruto had only taken a single day to recover all his strength, but he had no real attachment to this village. They fed him, but the food was crap quality compared to what he was used to. All it was salted fish and grilled veggies, as well as gathered fruit and nuts. The people of this village had no taste in great food, so he didn't particularly feel grateful for the food when he could get his own and make it better. He was grateful for the food, but he wasn't so grateful that he felt like part of the village. They fed him because half of them thought he was a god of healing, and the other half thought he was a god of destruction. They gave him food to pacify him or to seek out his help, so it wasn't really done out of the goodness of their hearts. Among the villagers, only Kokuyo, Chrome, and Kohaku seemed to actually see him as a person well, Ruri too, but he couldn't really tell with her nearly as much. Chrome is entering, but he won't win. He asked me if you would marry Ruri for him. That way he knew she would be with a man who could make her happy. Kohaku pointed out, but she knew that most likely wouldn't sway Naruto in the slightest. Chrome really does love her. And all he wishes for is knowing she'll be safe and protected. Naruto smiled. That's why I like Chrome, he's a good guy, though he is dense. Still, this tournament has nothing to do with me. I know I can't replace your love. But as thanks for saving my sister, I could become your bride as well. I don't have much else I can offer right now. Kohaku suggested, and Naruto glanced at her. She was treating romance very lightly. Not interested in love. You saved my sister's life, so I owe you a great debt I can never repay. If marrying you can settle that debt, I'll do it happily. Kohaku smiled and sat down next to Naruto. She watched as he just laid back down and closed his eyes, arms behind his head. She wondered what was going on in his head, since he didn't interact with most of the village. He mourned. The first 2 days after he cured Ruri, he vanished and none of them knew where he was, but she figured that he was mourning his lost love by himself those 2 days. On the third day, he appeared right back in the village. And interacted with people very little. If you want to pay me back, just get Senku to leave me alone. You know, Senku isn't evil. I know, he's a good guy, but he's also a scumbag. You don't have to be evil to be scum, and the way he gleefully wants to use people bothers me. Naruto never once thought Senku was evil or a bad guy, just that he was scum. People could be good, but at the same time scum. The two terms could exist within a person at the same time. Anyway, Naruto opened an eye and glanced into the distance. Further than the normal human eye could see. A few kilometers away in the forest, in a clearing, Naruto could see a group of men with weapons made out of stone. There were about 21 people in total, all men with large muscular frames. Naruto couldn't see their faces at this distance, but he could see their general body size. He closed his eye, and just went back to relaxing. What was that reaction? Kohaku stood up. How many strong warriors are in your village? Naruto asked. Carb, Hagane, Genbu, Jasper, Argo, Magma, Tetsukan, my father, me, Ginro and Kinro, Turquoise, Titan, and Alabaster, so about 14 warriors in the village. Kohaku explained as she counted most of them on her fingers. The village is mostly elderly, women, and children. There aren't a lot of warriors anymore after a famine a few years ago. Kohaku stated. How many strong warriors? Oh Titan, me, Magma, Kinro, Argo, and my father and Jasper. So on Bly 7 strong warriors. Kohaku recounted. There are 21 warriors headed this way through the forest. And at the speed they are traveling, you have a little over an hour. Naruto stated with his eyes still closed. He wasn't affiliated with the village. He had no duty to protect the village, but he wasn't evil. If he saw a small army of men coming to the village with clear intentions of attacking it, then he would give a fair warning. Women and children, and elderly. Kohaku jumped off the roof and shouted. Kohaku, what has gotten? There are 21 warriors headed this way. Kohaku told her father. There are 21 warriors headed to the village, and they are strong. All the women and children, get to the tournament arena. The strongest in the village, get armed and go to the bridge. Those who aren't strong, stay in the village and guard the bridge to the tournament area. Kokuyo barked out orders to the village. And the elderly started to slowly walk towards the bridge, and children surrounded them. They started to gather up so they could be protected. Naruto, Kokuyo looked at the roof of his home. And he saw Naruto relaxing with his eyes just closed. Why do we need to even bother fighting these invaders? Don't we have the god of destruction on our side? Hey deity, can't you just blink and wipe this guys out of existence? A man came up with sword in hand, and looked up towards Naruto with full and utter confidence. Magma, a deity will rarely involve themselves in the matters of humanity. Not without a proper tribute. We must prove ourselves to him, so that he remains our guardian deity. A defiant man, blonde with a rope tied around his head stated. His name was Carb. Naruto sighed. Fine by me, I guess we'll just have to offer some corpses to this guy as tribute then. Magma smashed his fist into his hand, ready for a bloody conflict. Magma looked up towards Naruto. O great deity of destruction, please watch gleefully as I kill this invaders for your amusement. Magma could remember the giant fox that had appeared in the forest clearly, the one that shattered the mountain in the distance. And had created a moon in the sky, only to destroy it. Naruto opened an eye and glanced down at Magma. Do what you want, but I don't accept corpses as tribute or even care about getting a tribute. Because I'm not a deity. Naruto corrected. So humble. Mantle rubbed his hands together next to Magma. They never believed him when he said he wasn't a god. In the forest, this isn't wise. The mountain next to our home exploded, and the ground shook. Whatever is going on, we can't afford to let that village stay where it is anymore. Tsukasa explained as he stood at the front of his armed force. They needed a new home, one that wasn't right next to the mountain that exploded for no reason. He gathered 18 of his strongest warriors. They were going to take the village by force. And make the village their new home so that they didn't have to worry about their home being the next mountain to mysteriously explode. Gen said that he saw a giant glowing fox standing next to the mountain. Hyoga stated as he looked at where the mountain used to stand. Gen's imagination, there is no such thing as giant foxes on fire. In all likelihood, a nuclear war head must have been inside of that mountain, in some kind of secret facility that withstood the test of time, and finally exploded. Tsukasa didn't believe that Gen had actually seen a giant fox made of golden flames. Such a tale was straight out of fantasy, but if there had been a hidden nuclear bunker in the mountain next to them, there was no telling if there were more nuclear bunkers. Don't kill any villagers who surrender. Only kill the ones who fight. Tsukasa gave that order out. Yes sir. I mean it, we won't be spilling needless blood, but if you see Senku, even if he surrenders, kill him. Tsukasa added. If Senku somehow was still alive, he needed to die. They made it to the bridge that led the way to the village. A spearman guarding a bridge, they do know how to properly use their warriors. It seems they were expecting us. Hyoga stated when they were seen. He saw the stance of the warrior standing on the bridge, though he seems only moderately skilled, though there are others. Hyoga gripped his spear and started to walk forward. Tsukasa extended a hand. Village guard, surrender and we won't shed any blood. Today doesn't have to be a bloody day. Tsukasa would be honorable and give that single warning. Kinro stayed silent and just readied his spear. Kinro, stand back. Kokuyo shouted as he joined Kinro with a stone sword in his hand, and a shield in his other. Let them file onto the bridge. We'll turn this into a single fight. Come, we won't let them take Ishigami village. Kokuyo shouted with his sword raised. He charged. He was defeated in a single blow from Tsukasa that knocked him out, and he raised his sword to finish the man off. Kinro grabbed Kokuyo by the foot and yanked him back towards the bridge, and he retreated back with the man. Magma. Ha 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 ha. Our guardian deity. Watch as I slaughter these. Magma watched as Hyoga moved forward, and his spear circled like a moon. He was then stabbed close to 11 times in a single moment by the warrior. And he dropped to his knees. He's strong. Magma got back to his feet and retreated back across the bridge as well. These are not proper warriors it seems. Is Senku among them? Hyoga asked Tsukasa. I don't see him here. Or in the back. Tsukasa looked towards the warriors on the other side of the bridge, and the non-combatants who were retreated on the small part of the village separated from the rest. If Senku was among them, he would notice right away. He looked around at everyone, and he saw the warriors were still more than ready to keep fighting. I see, so you survived. Tsukasa noticed the same blonde girl that he defeated in the forest. Yeah, I survived, guys. This guy is no joke. None of us can beat him. Even if we all team up together, this isn't good. Kohaku still had her daggers raised with her shield on her arm. She had a shiver go down her spine, but she was still ready to fight. I'm shocked you would attack the village, though. What, can't stand the thought of another tribe besides your own? Kohaku looked at her unconscious father. Tsukasa and Hyoga started to cross the bridge with the other warriors behind them. No, this is just a matter of protecting my people, so please lay down your weapons and you won't have to die. Tsukasa wasn't happy about going to war with people who were living simple lives, not when Senku was clearly not amongst them. He got to the halfway point across the bridge, and he froze. He felt pressure. Looking down at his arm, he could see goosebumps forming on his arm as a dangerous pressure pushed down on his shoulders. His instinct screamed at him that there was a powerful, dangerous foe on the other side of the bridge. He looked at the gathered warriors, and it couldn't be the ones that Hyoga easily defeated. It wasn't the girl he defeated either. When he looked at them, none of the gathered warriors triggered any feelings of suspense within him. This pressure, there is something dangerous on the other side of the bridge. Hyoga felt it too, and his eyes scanned the area outside of just the warriors. There, the guy sleeping on the hut over there. Hyoga located the man not taking any of this seriously. Tsukasa shivered the second he laid eyes on the man. That's Naruto, and he's extremely powerful. I wouldn't step across the bridge if I were you, because if you wake him up, he's a monster when unleashed. Kohaku bluffed as she glanced back at Naruto. Would Naruto even help them? She's bluffing, but not completely. That man, his existence fills me with terrible dread. I can sense that I stand no chance against him at all. But why is she bluffing? Is he not actually their ally? Tsukasa didn't take another step forward right away. Instead, he gestured for a thinner, smaller man behind him. Yukio. Right. Yukio. With bow in hand, to aim at Naruto. Thunk. Yukio froze when Naruto just raised a hand, and the stone head of the arrow shattered against the back of his hand. His eyes didn't open, and he didn't seem to even be bothered by the fact an arrow was just shot at him. Naruto opened his eyes. His eyes then turned to face Yukio, Tsukasa, and Hyoga. All three men stepped back. Out of pure instinct and muscle reflex, when they felt an intense desire to run within them. You dropped this. Tsukasa felt fear when he heard a voice come from behind him the second that Naruto vanished from the hut. The voice came from behind him before he even registered that Naruto was no longer on the roof of the hut actually. Tsukasa turned around, and froze again when he saw Yukio as Fr. Ozen in utter terror as Naruto placed the broken arrow back in his quiver. I didn't even hear him move. I didn't know he was standing. I didn't see him. It was like he teleported. Yukio had never once in his life been unable to hear a person move next to him before. Yet, Naruto had moved a good 100 meters without him hearing it, and he did so faster than his eyes could ever hope to track. I didn't even hear the sound of the air moving when Naruto got next to them. Splash! 12 men's headless bodies fell into the water. Tsukasa just noticed in that moment that Naruto was not only giving Yukio back his arrow, but he looked down at his own hand to see that he wasn't holding his weapon anymore. He looked to see that instead Naruto was holding his sword. He killed 12 men and we didn't even see it happen. All we noticed was him. That's Tsukasa's sword. He took Tsukasa's sword, killed 12 men, and then gave Yukio back the arrow he shot all before we even noticed he did it. Hyoga's spear dropped out of his hand, rolled off the side of the bridge, and fell into the water. The will to fight left his body completely as he saw the water under the bridge turning red. I wasn't going to get involved. But then you had to go and attack me. How you guys didn't plan to kill the innocent or elderly, so I really didn't want to get involved. Naruto complained as he gave Tsukasa back his sword. Then he vanished again before Tsukasa could do anything with his sword. He appeared in front of the village warriors. This was not my battle to fight, so I only killed the people who were soaked. With a desire for blood. Well, honestly, I didn't want to kill any of you. I was fine to just let you all fight your little battle over territory, as long as no innocent people got attacked. Naruto was among the innocent who didn't plan to battle, so the second they shot an arrow at him, they told him with that one move that they were willing to hurt innocent people so long as they believed they could be a possible threat. Kohaku sighed in relief. My bluff worked, and they called it. I never expected they would attack him, but they involved Naruto in this. Kohaku smiled. Tsukasa threw his cloak off his shoulders. Hyuga, Yukio, I'll hold him off long enough for you to get everyone else to escape. I can't hold him off for more than a few seconds at most. I'm not going to kill you if you surrender and escape. I only killed the people who had the intention to kill the innocent in their eyes. Though, one of you has their eyes closed. Naruto pointed out as he looked at Hyuga. I don't attack people who surrender. So surrender and run away if you want. I'm not a part of this village, but because you attacked me, today I'll protect them. Naruto pointed his hand towards the forest in the distance. What is? Tsukasa's eyes widened. A small yellow sphere appeared in his hand like magic. Then, it exploded in a violent tornado of energy that destroyed a large section of the forest in the distance. Going kilometers in length, and the width of the crater was larger than the village itself. The tornado kept going until it slammed into a mountain and then went right through the mountain as if it were made of paper. And that is a warning. Naruto told them. He's a god, Hyuga whispered, and he had never been more glad to drop his spear in his life. The men behind him had already turned tail and ran away. He wanted to run as well, but his legs were frozen in place, and his open eyes saw the destruction the mythical man before him was able to cause at a whim. He glanced at Yukio, who was frozen in much the same way. He dropped to his knees and bowed his head on the bridge, and Hyuga followed suit. He's too powerful to even dream of fighting. If he wanted to kill us, he could do it just by wanting us dead. I can tell I've lost. I could revive 1,000,000 men, and I would still lose. That guy called this man their guardian deity. Tsukasa's mind was running at full speed. He dropped to a knee and fist. And bowed his head. Please, Naruto, guardian deity of this village, please leave these people behind and come join my own kingdom of might. We are stronger than these people. So we can better serve you, and better get your blessings. We can revive as many people from stone to form your harem as you wish, and feed you as many tributes as you want. Tsukasa saw this as his only victory condition. Get this god who showed no loyalty to this village, to leave them behind and join his kingdom as their own guardian deity instead. I shot an arrow at a god. I shot an arrow at a god. I shot an arrow at a god. Yukio was breathing heavily as that thought alone ran through his head. He shot an arrow at a god. He disrespected an actual deity. If my eyes had not been closed, I would be dead right now too. Hyuga was frozen with his eyes open. If his eyes hadn't been closed when Naruto killed those men, then there was a real chance he too would have been killed. He glanced down at Tsukasa bowing his head, and he took the same bowing stance. Please, allow me to be your humble disciple. Hyuga grabbed Yukio and forced him to bow the right way. Yukio was a useful man. And needed to survive this. I'm really not interested in women. Then a harem of men. Hyuga offered instead. Kohaku giggled. Okay, walked into that. The way I see it, unless you people can offer me some good ramen. I'm not interested at all in joining any of you. Naruto stated plainly. Ramen. What's ramen? It's a food I'm craving right now. Naruto answered Kohaku, and he glanced down and saw that Tsukasa, Yukio, and Hyuga were already running back towards the forest. Once they were behind the trees, though Naruto could still see them, Naruto went to the bridge and leaned up against one of the posts sticking up out of the ground. Today I'll guard the village. Naruto stated as he sat down and closed his eyes. The village warriors cheered. Oh shit, that was Tsukasa who just ran by. Senku thought. Pale and sweating, when Tsukasa ran right by him without noticing him. So Naruto likes ramen, huh? So I can pay him with ramen, Senku grinned. He now knew exactly how to get Naruto onto his side. Food. Wuh, this is so bad. I've never tasted anything so good in my life. Amazing. This ramen is kind of just trash. Senku glanced at Chrome, Kohaku, and Ruri, all gushing over the foxtail ramen that he had gotten their help making, because he didn't have wheat to make real ramen with. The closest thing he could find was a plant similar to wheat. But that plant had a strong bitter aftertaste, and it was very coarse. Still, Compared to people who have only ever tasted dried fruits and veggies, salted fish and smoked wild animals, even this meal had to be overwhelmingly good. They didn't care that the noodles were coarse and uneven, of that there was a bitter flavor to it. They were used to salted and bitter flavors, so to them, the ramen had provided was a taste of heaven. If Yuzuria were here, maybe she and Taiju would do better at making ramen. Senku still finished the noodle dish so that he didn't waste the food. He laid his G outwards right into the crater that gouged out the land, and he could see the shattered mountain in the distance. Naruto's unknown technology, it far surpasses anything humanity had ever achieved. Not even a nuclear warhead could destroy a mountain, but the tech he uses makes that seem like a task barely worth the effort. Senku had to admit, he couldn't wrap his mind around how that technology could work. It was almost like magic. Yet, magic didn't exist, only science existed, and all magic was just unexplained science. He wanted to bribe Naruto to get him to explain his technology, and to protect him from Tsukasa. I bet Naruto would love this. Ruri smiled as she finished her bowl. Love this, this ramen. With Tsukasa. Is pure garbage, not fit to feed a god with his tribute. Tsukasa finished the bowl that he was taste testing. He couldn't call the ramen pure garbage, it tasted fine for what it was, and the ingredients they had to make it out of. They used local plants, foxtails, to make the noodles. And it was a very meaty ramen to say the least. Seasoned with some herbs and sea salt, but overall the quality was an insult to ramen. If they gave this to Naruto, it would be an insult. Should we even try? Hyoga asked him. We're lucky he spared out lives in the first place, and allowed us to go. He didn't make any request, but the fact is if that village makes ramen first, and it tastes good, they might ask him to destroy us so that we never attack them again. Yukio stated with his hand shaking, but he grabbed his wrist with his other hand, and he stopped it the best that he could. He had been shaken to his very core. The mountain that was destroyed was no random mountain. It was the closest mountain to the spot they called home. He had given them a very clear signal. That it didn't matter where he was, he could destroy them at a whim and they couldn't do anything to stop him. It was no mere intimidation tactic, because it was power he could back up. Right now, and every second they delayed, could be another second that the primitive village made ramen and requested their destruction. That girl she played as for fools, she truly was a proper enemy. Hyoga remembered that blonde girl and her bluff. If she had never mentioned Naruto at all, then Yukio wouldn't have had a reason to try and take him out as a threat. He wouldn't have gotten involved with them. Unless they targeted the innocent. The act of labeling Naruto a threat had forced them to take him as one, which in turn changed him from a non-threat into one. That girl had bluffed them. And when they called her bluff, they messed up. They had no way of knowing the power of the deity. We need to find better ingredients, and what is more, we need to find somebody with the talent to cook those ingredients. Tsukasa needed to get his number one woman for locating talented and strong people on the job for this one. He was sure that Senku was alive at this point, and it was a race to see who could create the best ramen. Where is Gen? Tsukasa asked. Do you think Gen, at the edge of Ishigami village, would stay with them when they challenged a god to a fight? En whispered with a wide-mouthed grin once he looked towards Naruto, who was peacefully sleeping on the roof of one of the buildings in the village. He truly was a lazy god, it would seem, and barely moved from wherever he placed himself that day. He had been watching for 2 days. People brought Naruto food, he ate it, and then he listened to the problems and worries of the people who fed him, but he didn't really do much. He humored the children a little more than the adults, so he seemed to have a soft spot for kids. He had shown absolutely no violent actions, but that might be because nobody was provoking his wrath. He smelled something cooking. He froze when Naruto glanced over at him, and it felt like piercing blue eyes were on him, but he just raised his hands in surrender, and that piercing feeling went away. He's fully aware I'm here. Right, Gen? No matter how much you might have mastered the human mind, this guy isn't just some human, he's a god. Still, it's much safer siding with these simpletons than it is staying with the people who attacked him. Gen gulped, but became more confident once Naruto closed his eyes and ignored him. With that gesture, even with the pressure gone, he was assured that so long as he didn't go after somebody who couldn't fight back, that he would be okay. So General walked towards the smell of something cooking away from the village. There was Senku, with the girl that tricked Yukio into shooting at Naruto, and another girl that appeared to be her sister with how similar their faces were. Finally, some unknown guy. He recognized Senku at least by his physical description. With Naruto, that guy wasn't a threat, just a coward. Naruto took a deep breath, before he let it out. He heard the sound of a small child climbing up the side of the building he was on. And he could smell some food being brought to him. He sensed the negative emotion of cowardice from the man, so he could guess pretty easily what happened. The man fled Tsukasa, so that he could try and make allies with the people of this village, and maybe get on his good side while he was at it. "Hey, Mr. God, Naruto," Naruto stated as he opened his eyes again, and he looked towards the small girl that climbed to the top of the hut. She had a melon on the top of her head, and she was a skinny, young child without too much meat on her bones. He sat him and looked to see that she had brought him apples and wild nuts and berries. "God Naruto. Just Naruto. Okay, Mr. Naruto, I got these for you. Can I ask you, can you cure my fuzzy sickness like you cured Ruri's sickness?" The girl asked as she handed the pot filled with fruits and nuts to him. She got closer to him, and he could see through the eyes of her melon. She was squinting a little to see, so he hazarded a guess. I'm Suika. And I can't see really good, my eyes have the fuzzy sickness." Suika got closer to Naruto, and she removed the melon from her head. She was very pretty for a young girl. She had features that would for sure one day age into a beautiful young woman, no doubt, but those pretty features scrunched up and turned ugly as she tried to get a good look at him without her melon on. Naruto took the melon from her, and he placed a hand on her cheek and brought her closer to get a good look at her eyes. Yeah, this girl nearsighted. He really couldn't do anything about that though other than make her glasses. "I'm sorry if I'm annoying you, and asking for too much," Suika apologized when Naruto didn't say anything to her after a few minutes of him looking into her eyes. Naruto hummed in thought. He touched his finger right to the edge of her eye, without touching the eyeball itself. The eye he was touching closed slightly, but not all the way. Nearsightedness made things further away appear blurry. But things that were close up were a bit more clear. She wasn't truly blind, but her sight wasn't great either. He was not a doctor. He was not a medical ninja. Still, he was an Uzumaki. And his chakra had natural healing properties to it. He knew that Karen, another Uzumaki, wore glasses despite that chakra, so the Uzumaki chakra didn't fix eyesight in Uzumaki. Our ninja who already had chakra at least. Naruto channeled the most minuscule amount of chakra possible into Suika's eyes from his point of contact. "Ow ow ow," Suika whispered as tears gathered at the edges of her eyes. She felt like her eyes were burning and stinging, and her vision was getting worse. Then, the burning and the stinging stopped completely, and she saw Naruto's face as clear as day. The tears were still in her eyes. But those eyes that had been burning widened. Naruto didn't say another word, he just accepted the food she offered him and laid back down. "Thank you. You cured my fuzzy sickness." Suika jumped onto Naruto and hugged him. He did smile for a few moments, before he put a slightly forced neutral look. "Honestly, I just used chakra to purposely make your vision worse. And then when my chakra healed your eyes, back to normal, your eyes were fixed because my chakra considers my eyesight normal." Naruto did not do medical ninjutsu right there for her. It was just an idea he had. Since she had no chakra network and no chakra of her own. Use his chakra to burn her eyes. Then use his chakra to heal her eyes, and since she didn't have any chakra of her own. When her eyes healed, they healed according to what his chakra considered healing to be, instead of what her chakra said it would be. This method of healing only worked because she had no chakra at all. And she was so young that her eyes weren't anywhere close to being finished developing. Thank you so much." Suika continued to blubber out her thanks with tear-filled eyes. He just rubbed the back of her head. Whoa, he actually helped her. Usually he ignores our requests. Guess he was in a good mood today, or he had a craving for what she brought him. "No, I'm just got a knot. So when you ask me for things like granting you the skills to fly, or change your dreams to good dreams, I can't do anything about that." Naruto huffed, since so many people had requests for him. That he just couldn't do anything about, so he ignored those requests completely. Suika was an innocent child with a wish that was slightly within his power to grant, and her hands and knees were stained with dirt and mud. She had worked really hard to gather the best fruits and nuts that she could. Sometimes, he did ignore the things within his power to grant, just because he really didn't want the people of this village to rely on him for anything. One day, a way back home could open up, and he wouldn't hesitate to leave these people. It was just best to make it so that they never relied on him to solve all their issues. Suika stopped crying in joy after a few minutes. She put the melon back on her head. You know, it just doesn't feel right without the melon. Suika smiled, but now her vision was fixed. She jumped off the top of the hut and actually landed on her feet. I've got to tell Kohaku I can see. Suika ran towards the bridge. Naruto smiled again, and he just waved to her. It wasn't 20 minutes before somebody else came to the roof of the hut. Good morning, mighty deity, please give me the strength of 100 men, enough that I can easily defeat those invaders from the other day. Magma with bandages all over his body requested as he brought Naruto a pot filled with wine. Shit, he's asleep, better not wake him up. Magma whispered as he quietly climbed off of the roof, and once he was off, Naruto opened an eye and looked towards where he had been. Naruto sighed. Great, since I fixed Suika's eyes, people are going to be bothering me more today, guess. I'll just pretend to be asleep for the rest of the day. Naruto was making himself out to be a very sluggish and lazy god to these people, since they refused to believe he wasn't a god. He hoped that they would eventually just stop asking him for favors. Seriously, how was he supposed to grant a wish to bring a great and bountiful catch when it came to fishing? He could go into the ocean and catch them tons of fish. But then they would just come to rely on him to feed them. It was hours later before anyone else bothered him. I know you aren't sleeping, you sleep so much that I can tell when you're faking. Kohaku stated to Naruto as she climbed up on top, and she stood with her legs on either side of his waist. She was smiling down at him, and she had a plate of dinner for him. She was one of the few who accepted him as a human and not a god. This food wasn't a tribute, it was just a kind gesture. What have you been working on with the onion head? Naruto asked as he opened an eye and looked up. I've been eating all day, and helping that guy try and make that thing you've been craving. It was super delicious, I've never tasted flavors like that before. It had this gritty texture. And it was really meaty and salty, with a bitter aftertaste. Ramen shouldn't be bitter. Naruto deadpanned at her. You know, I think he is doing this for you. Of course he is, he wants me to protect him from Tsukasa and those other guys. Thanks for fixing Suika's eyes, it means a lot that you actually performed your duties as a god, instead of just ignoring people. Kohaku didn't bother denying what he said. So she changed the subject. She crouched down so that she was sitting on his lap, though he was still laying down. She didn't bother with personal space, since he didn't care about it. Not a god. I know. But you really might as well be. All of us really owe you a debt of gratitude for saving us from the long-haired man. Kohaku offered her thanks for that again. One day, I might not be around to protect you all, so you need to get stronger. I stepped in that time because they got me involved. You got involved because you're a big softie, and you can't street. And the thought of innocent people getting hurt. Be honest, if my life were in danger, you would have saved me. Kohaku smiled knowingly at him. I would let you die. Sure you would. Kohaku didn't believe Naruto for a second. His eyes were closed, but she was sure if they were open he wouldn't be able to meet her gaze. Naruto was a good man, too good of a man to allow a young woman like her to die without stepping in. He might pretend to be impartial, but she knew Naruto would protect his friends. You would just let me, one of your friends, die in battle. You aren't the type of man. Kohaku poked Naruto's heart as she leaned over him. Naruto flicked her in the forehead. She was sent flying off the roof, but she landed on her feet and hands like a cat. Naruto snorted. Smartass. Naruto muttered as he opened an eye. And he glanced to see the sun setting over the ocean in the distance. He smiled to himself, and started to lazily eat what Kohaku brought him for dinner. 2s. Altiha I would kill for some ramen right about now, or even udon. Heck, I would settle for toast with jam. Naruto just wanted something that was tasty, and not the most basic meal he could think of. As long as it wasn't that bad ramen Kohaku described. Weird. Is that Chrome taking an old man towards his hut? Naruto hummed in thought as he glanced towards Chrome, who had a man bound. Byropen was leading him away from the village. That alone would be a weird sight, to see a tiny old man being pulled by a rope, but Chrome wasn't a bad guy, so Naruto was sure that whatever was going on was completely harmless. Weird, but overall harmless. Naruto stood up. Not because he wanted to check on where Chrome was going with the old man, but because he saw a group of kids following Ruer and Kohaku as they went towards the sea. They had fishing poles, basic ones that were pretty much just string on sticks, but it was more interesting. Also, he was curious why Kohaku was taking the kids to learn how to fish. If that was what was going on. She also had a spear in her other hand, so maybe she was also teaching them how to spear fish. He had been pretending to sleep for a few days when he wasn't eating. So he was kind of bored. Fishing sounded fun. A little later. Well, that is revealing. Kohaku was wearing a top that was not a bra, but also wasn't a swimsuit either. It was a cloth tied around her breasts with a rope to hold and cover her breasts. Actually, none of them women he had noticed wore a bra. She also had her entire ass showing as she had a rope around her waist. That had a thin cloth tied to it that went over her crotch and between her butt cheeks. Ruri was dressed much the same way. Ruri is sitting with the I get it now. Naruto realized what was going on as most of the kids stripped down so they could get into the shallow water with Kohaku. The kids were young enough that none of them really paid much attention to the fact they were getting down to their underwear around each other, and none of them paid attention to Kohaku's mostly naked body either. Ruri never got to experience fishing, so Kohaku was teaching her, and she was also teaching the kids at the same time. They were bonding with each other in a way where they could pass skills on to the kids as well, which was good for the village, and just a great way to make these important skills fun. Kohaku noticed a glint in her eye. She glanced up towards Naruto sitting nearby, since the sun glinted off his forehead protector. It seems we have an audience. Kohaku turned her head towards Naruto. And that alerted everyone else to the fact he was there. Naruto-sama. To the kids who were used to seeing him sleeping on top of village huts, seeing him sitting somewhere else and watching them had to be a real change of pace. Naruto jumped down and landed on top of the water, and by instinct he started to stand on the water instead of falling into it. He sat down on top of the water. Ignore me, I'm just watching. Naruto waved off any concerns anyone might have. That's a new ability, why don't you join? We're teaching the boys how to fish, and the girls are helping collect seashells from the water and seaweed. It might be fun to see how the esteemed Naruto-sama collects fish and seaweed. Kohaku teased, though she was surprised to see him walking and now sitting on water. Why? Senku needs seashells and seaweed for something, no clue why. I think he said something about needing it for the ramen he wants to make. Kohaku had no clue why seashells and seaweed would be useful in ramen making. But she wanted to taste whatever it was that he was making. Chrome grabbed old man Kaseki to help make some kind of tool that will be used to collect potato starch, I think it was called. Kohaku didn't know what the deal with that was either, but potatoes tasted good, so whatever came out of them must taste good too. Naruto glanced at Ruri, who smiled at him gracefully. And he looked at all of the excited kids who were waiting to see him do something amazing. Some of them were just amazed to see him standing on the surface of the water instead of sinking. I see, Naruto was conflicted. He was craving ramen, and Senku seemed like a smart guy, so if he was collecting specific ingredients he had to have a reason. Still, as much as Senku was a good guy, he was also the type to expect others to do the hard work for him, and manipulate people into doing what he wanted. The entire reason he was making ramen was to try and manipulate him into helping and protecting him, so he was conflicted. Senku being good didn't really matter much, when Naruto just didn't want to give the guy the satisfaction of making good ramen. Yet, ramen. He hadn't eaten any ramen since he had a cup of ramen on the moon, and that had been weeks ago at this point, so his ramen cravings were reaching higher and higher levels. Naruto glanced at the kids, who had stars in their eyes, wanting to see him do something amazing as well. Showing off to kids was something he actually enjoyed, because their innocent and pure reactions were always fun to see. He was conflicted on even that. Because this was a good skill for them to learn, and he didn't want to ruin it by getting them too excited to pay attention, but he also wanted to show off now that he was feeling a lot better. He had mourned, and though he was still sad, he had recovered from his mourning and was feeling exceedingly bored. I want to see. Naruto crossed his arms in deep thought. Fine. Naruto stood up again. He grinned. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Whoa whoa. Kohaku grabbed her head in amazement as she watched Naruto multiply himself from one Naruto to hundreds, or maybe even over 1,000, OPs of himself that were all standing in the water. The kids were amazed as well, and screaming in joy when they saw so many Naruto copies just appear out of nowhere. A couple hundred copies were holding fish in their hands. A couple hundred copies were holding lots of seashells between their fingers. A couple hundred had seaweed dangling from their closed fists. Then, all of his clones vanished. And everything they were holding fell back into the water, and Naruto moved to the sand. He sat down in the sand with his feet in the water, and he looked towards everyone with a slight smirk. With that demonstration, he showed off how quickly and easily he could feed their entire village, but he also showed a cool ability that would have the kids talking for years, maybe the rest of their lives. Why did you throw them back? That much fish could have fed the village for a month. Kohaku was shocked when Naruto just had his clones vanish, dropping everything they had caught back into the water. Naruto rolled his eyes. There were several thousand fish there, and guess what? The fish would go bad faster than people would eat them. Also, the village isn't exactly hurting for fish. You guys can feed yourselves. Naruto was perfectly fine with allowing the fish to go free. Taking thousands of fish out of the area, when most of them would go bad before people could even eat them, just didn't make sense to him. Let me ask you, did Senku ask you to get the kids together to get this stuff? Naruto asked Kohaku. Yeah, he's also used the ramen he made to convince guild a lot of villagers into helping him make some kind of metal thingy. He made some kind of iron thing. Kohaku remembered Senku talking to Chrome about a plan to rope a few villagers into helping him create the tools science he needed to turn potatoes into noodles. She didn't remember all of the details, since many of them went over her head. He's turning rocks into stuff over there, don't know how though. I just figured. Since I was going to be spending time with my sister, why not? Naruto deadpanned. What a scumbag, using ramen to lure people into obedience. Meh, you eat, you work. Kohaku thought it was a scummy thing to do. But if somebody ate the food, then there was no issue with asking them to work for the grub. The only bad part was not telling people they would need to work until after they already ate. Okay kids, if you want to catch fish with your bare hands, just stick your hand under the water for a while, let your hand go kind of cold, and then wiggle your finger like a worm. Kohaku stuck her hand under the water. She stood there for about 20 minutes, before she yanked her hand out of the water, showing that she had caught a fish by the mouth. The kids clapped their hands, before going into the water to imitate her. Even Ruri joined in with the kids, showing her own interest in fishing without a pole or a spear. Naruto took a shuriken out. This could be hilarious. Naruto took aim at Kohaku's underwear. And he flung the shuriken at a speed fast enough that she couldn't see it. The tip of the shuriken passed by her underwear, and just barely cut halfway through it. He frayed rope looked like multiple worms as it floated in the water. Ah! Kohaku flinched forward when a fish tackled her butt and tried to go between her butt cheeks. Naruto chuckled. Another fish attacked her butt. And Kohaku had to wade through the water as multiple fish just began to ram their heads between the cheeks of her ass. The frayed rope acting like worms to the many dozens of fish were following Kohaku around was just hilarious to him. How are you making the fish attack my ah? Kohaku turned around and grabbed two fish out of the water, and she clenched her thighs together to trap several fish between them. She smiled in satisfaction as she captured quite a few fish, even though more fish were still attacking her butt. Naruto laid back against the sand and crossed his arms behind his head. Kohaku threw a fish at him. He caught the fish, and then he grabbed a handful of sand, and shoved it into the mouth of the fish, before he threw the fish back at Kohaku at a speed she could barely react to. Barely. Kohaku did react, and she caught the fish right before it hit her face. Sand in my eyes. She caught the fish right in front of her face, and the sand in the fish all came flying right into her face. And thus she went backwards into the water. Are you okay, Kohaku? Ruri rushed to her wet sister's side. I will find out how. Kohaku stood up, and her underwear did not go up with her. She felt her crotch was no longer covered. Oh well. Kohaku just covered her crotch with a hand instead of freaking out. Bald, surprising, Naruto muttered as he glanced her way. He expected her to be completely unshaven, full bush. He guessed she was just naturally pretty hairless. Sorry, my bad, here. Naruto took his jacket off and tossed it to Kohaku, and she caught it. She twisted the arms up to make them into a spiral rope, before she made the jacket into makeshift underwear in the same style that she wore in the water. Thanks. She was really not ashamed of her body, was she? So status update. Naruto asked the voices in his head. The land of wind was devastated. The backlash from the cannon that teleported you to this world caused the ocean to begin flooding the desert. Shukaku gave a status report to Naruto over what had happened since he had been gone. It was 1 week until the tournament that would decide who the next village chief would be. And Naruto still hadn't put his name down. He respected Chrome, and Chrome had entered the tournament so that he could win Ruri's hand in marriage. Now that he had finished mourning Hinata, Shikamaru, Hanabi, Sakura, and Sai, who had died in the mess that pulled them over with him, he wanted to check how long it would take for him to get back home. The land of water spilled over into the land of wind, and hundreds of underwater volcanoes erupted, reducing the islands to nothing. Isobu confirmed for Naruto the destruction of not just the land of wind, but the land of water as well. The moon, being teleported, had caused massive issues. The void. When the moon teleported, the void that was left behind caused the planet to violently shift, which was causing massive damage to everything. The tailed beasts would be fine, because if they died they would just respawn somewhere close by to where Naruto was. Sasuke is currently slaughtering everyone who charged the chakra cannon. He found out that the Hokage was to blame, and has gone on a warpath. He's trying to save as many lives as possible with Killer Bee. Yuki informed Naruto. Nobody could blame Sasuke. The Hokage firing the cannon had been the final nail in the coffin that sealed humanity's fate. Sasuke had, at first, mourned the loss of Sakura and Naruto, who he thought had died. Then, he had gone on the warpath against the Hokage. And after learning that Naruto might be alive was when things messed up. The world started to go to shit very quickly. So the land of fire. Naruto whispered as he looked up at the moon. This world's moon. Gone. The volcanoes in the land of fire started to erupt one after another. Many lives were lost, and the same for the land of earth. The shinobi have been trying to save as many lives as possible but to no avail. Sun answered Naruto's question. Naruto sat up, and he looked at the small village he was staying in. Saiken, you live close to where the toads are, can you check up on them for me? Naruto asked. No need, I already have. The toads are okay, but they refuse to summon you back. They believe that you don't deserve to suffer the same fate as the rest of humanity. I respect their decision. Saiken responded to Naruto's request with a confirmation. Naruto could understand and respect that choice, and if those words were true, then there really wasn't much that he could do to save his home world. He was saddened by the fact that Sasuke had went for revenge, but there was nothing that could be done about that. Sasuke's rage against A was completely justified in this case, since the man had doomed all of humanity to destruction. Hey Kohaku. Naruto looked up when a shadow went over him, and he saw up Kohaku's top. He looked between her breasts, and saw her eyes looking down at him. She had a spear in her hand that had 10 fish on it, and her body was covered in a layer of fresh ocean water. She must have been out fishing, and she had caught quite the haul if the smell of her was anything to notice. She smelled like fish. Need something? Naruto asked her as he stood up. He was staring at her face from between her boobs, which was awkward for him. So instead he would look down at her as he stood. He could still see her ample cleavage this way, but at least right now he could look at her face without looking through her boobs to see it. You seem not okay right now. Kohaku just noticed that Naruto didn't seem okay. That was it. Not really, turns out I lost more than just my friends. My home is gone. I had some hope I could go back home. Abandon this place, but now I don't really have a home to return to, and the place I could have gone to doesn't want me back. Naruto could have always gone to live with the toads, but they didn't. Want him to leave this place where he could be with other humans. It saddened him, but he understood. He had no home. His country, his allies, his loved ones were all gone, and those that remained wouldn't be there for much longer. He was sure that Sasuke would one day track him down and join him on this world, but who knew how long it would take. It could take years before Sasuke found this dimension. Not that it mattered that much at the moment. This could be your home. Ishigami Village is my home, can't it be your home too? Kohaku looked at her home, since they were standing on top of where she lived. She could see everyone in the village. She looked at Naruto, who had the immense respect of everyone already. Many hailed him as a god, and those that saw him as a man, believed he was still to be respected. Naruto smiled. Naruto sat back down, and Kohaku sat with him. He extended his hand, and his body started to glow with a chakra so powerful that even Kohaku could feel it, see it, and sense it down to her bones. She watched as the water of the ocean started to vibrate, and the ground itself started to shake as if there were an earthquake happening. The pressure of Naruto's power was so great that she felt an immense weight appear over her shoulders, pushing her to bow down. Many other in the village who had been standing, were now face first on the dirt as they slowly crumbled to the power. Naruto stopped flexing his chakra. The ocean and land stopped shaking, and the pressure was gone. What was that? Kohaku breathed in, and she didn't even realize that she had stopped breathing at some point. I flexed my power outward. It's hard to call this place home, when the people here worship me like a god and I have the power to just destroy this place by thinking about it. To the people here, even though I am human, I don't feel human. Back where I come from, what I just did wouldn't matter here. I barely raised my chakra at all, but I made everyone in the village bow to me. Naruto stated as he showed Kohaku why it was so hard for him to really see this place as his new home. Even though he was sure everyone would accept him as a member of their community, they wouldn't accept him as Naruto. He wasn't a human to many of them, and instead a god. He had excellent control of his chakra, perfect even. If he wanted to, he could power up to full power without doing what he just did. He proved his point by powering up in front of Kohaku, and his entire body lit up with golden yellow flames. There was no pressure this time as Naruto fully controlled power to prevent anyone from feeling it. Naruto powered back down just as easily, and Kohaku suddenly understood. She always knew. It's because many people here can never see you as a man, only something greater than that. Kohaku understood Naruto's problem with calling this place home. She had been sitting down, so she hadn't been forced to bow to him like everyone else. You don't. I don't. Kohaku asked. I didn't just make this village bow, I made Tsukasa's entire kingdom bow to me, even where they were standing so far away. Do you think anyone can really accept me as just Naruto here? Naruto just couldn't see how anyone could see him for who he was, when everyone knew he had this power at his fingertips. He could force anyone to submit at any moment, and everyone knew it. I do though. I've always seen you as just Naruto, and I think you're the friend who saved my big sister. I owe you a lot, but not because you're some god, but because you are you. Kohaku didn't see why Naruto was struggling with believing nobody could believe him to be a simple man. Senku just thinks you're a guy with some science thingies making you seem magical. He sees you a person to and Rome sees you as a man, he even buried Hinata for you. Kohaku listed the people she knew that didn't see Naruto as a god. Naruto smiled. Senku is a scumbag, but that is one good trait he has. Okay. Well, it isn't like I have anything better to do. After mourning my friends, I don't really feel like mourning my home too. I think I'm just going to relax for a little bit longer. I'll put off thinking about this stuff until tomorrow. Naruto stated as he closed his eyes. That's it, you spent so long mourning your. I did, and I'm numb to mourning, maybe. Naruto opened his eyes when it started to rain. And thunderclouds formed over the village. Was that my fault? Naruto sat up when lightning jumped from cloud to cloud, and he had to think on if he had accidentally used too much chakra and changed the weather. Naruto looked up. Nope, this was a natural thunderstorm. The wrath of the sky has arrived. Wrath of the sky? Naruto asked Kohaku when he saw the villagers all panicking and rushing the women and children into their huts. Kohaku jumped off the roof, and she helped her sister to get the elderly back into their huts. The weather changing was quick, but it seemed this was the stormy season, so that was to be expected. Oh, lightning. Naruto realized what was being talked about when he heard thunder and saw lightning. Mighty God, please, use your power to calm the wrath of the sky. Please, save us. If the sky's wrath hits us, we will die. Naruto looked up towards the sky with a raised eyebrow, and he looked at the panicking villagers. He didn't see what the big deal was. So long as they stayed in their huts they should be okay. There were taller mountains and trees in the area that the lightning should be drawn to much more than this little village. Even if he didn't get involved, he seriously doubted anyone was going to die from this. Still, these people were freaking out. The elderly and children were so scared that they looked close to crying. So he could tell that people had been killed by lightning in the past. That level of trauma didn't just come out of nowhere after all. Like that bolt coming right for him. Oh, this isn't going to really hurt me, Naruto stated as he didn't bother to dodge. He just put his body into a guarded state where his chakra was flowing more energetically, and the lightning that struck him barely fazed him. It burnt the shoulder of his jacket, but that was really all the damage amounted to as his body sparked with electricity for a few seconds. Why did lightning strike? That one is my fault. Naruto had charged up the air around him with chakra, and caused it to vibrate with power. Of course the lightning would be attracted to that. Naruto raised his hand up, and a bolt of lightning struck him. It traveled through his body and into his feet, where it dispersed into the ground around him. Naruto acted as a living lightning rod by making his finger vibrate with chakra, since if the lightning struck him, nobody would need to fear it. With the dense chakra around his finger, not only did he take the lightning, but he cut through it with ease as well. Eventually the storm passed. Lord Naruto has stopped the wrath of the sky from taking any lives. My hand flipping tingles. Naruto shook the hand that lightning kept striking. Repeated strikes might not hurt him at all, but boy did it cause his skin to tingle. His hair was standing on end, but that calmed down when he neutralized the electricity in his body with wind chakra moments later. The lightning dispersed harmlessly, though everyone had spiky hair in the immediate area. Not even the wrath of the sky can hurt you. That isn't anywhere close to the worst lightning I've ever been struck with on a scale from 1 to 10. That lightning was like a 0.5, maybe even a 0.25. The way it made my hand tingle is annoying, but that's about it, Naruto stated to Ruri when she was the first one to approach him, and thank him for calming the sky. Which he did not do. The storm naturally just passed. All he did was tank all the lightning so that none of it hit anything else in the area. Sasuke's Indra's arrow was way worse than any of those pathetic bolts of nature. Not even a 2. Ruri asked. Well, now that the storm has passed, I'm hungry. I'll tell you all what anyone who brings me something to eat will be in for a surprise very soon. Naruto walked over to a hut, and he sat down with his back to it. He smiled when he saw people get excited for the surprise. He smirked to himself, and he glanced towards Kohaku. She nodded to him. The wrath of the sky was just what our local god needed to cheer him up. Naruto rolled his eyes when somebody said something completely wrong. Well, honestly, everyone looking at me like a hero has put me in a better mood, so they aren't as completely wrong as they seem. Naruto corrected his own thoughts. People staring at him from their huts in love and appreciation had made him feel like there was a chance he could call this place home, even if they didn't see him as a human. Maybe playing the part of their local guardian could be fun for a little while. Naruto entertained the thought, only for a moment. The temptation was there, but he would rather be known as a human. Maybe he should check up on that ramen that Senku was making. So let me get this correct. And please forgive my rudeness if it sounds like I don't believe you. A small short person with the build and frame of a woman, with blonde hair that was at chin length done in a very feminine style. And on the back of both of her hands she had a scar in the shape of a star mark. She had a very professional stance when she stood, and she was standing next to a statue of a man that she kept glancing to. I don't mind any rudeness. From what I have heard, Francois, you are one of the best cooks in Japan, and we have great need of your skills. Tsukasa stated as he looked at the woman, or maybe man. He never got a good look at her genitals before a leaf dress have been placed over her body. He would just go with woman due to the fact it would be extremely hard to see her as a man with her general build. Tsukasa glanced at Minami Hokutozai, who had found this woman's statue for him. She looked at the man's statue next to the woman with some displeasure. You revived me from petrification. And for the sole purpose of my butler skills, which include cooking, because a god is craving ramen. This god came to this world when a second moon appeared in the sky, and then exploded, and now he is Protecting a village of Stone World natives. Francois asked as she glanced up towards the night sky, and she could only see a crescent moon there. The story she had been told was not one that could be swallowed easily and digested without some sort of proof. Correct, I give my word on that. I see, your word, and is it your word that I must believe that once my job is done, that my employer will be returned back from stone? Francois looked at the stone man next to her, and Tsukasa had moved so that his hand was on top of the man's head, gripping it with the clear urge to break the statue. But he was holding himself back from doing so. Tsukasa's eyes showed a desire, but at the same time, he prevented himself from following that desire purely out of a bigger need to gain support. He really needed a chef to make ramen. Is that what you wish? Tsukasa asked. Is that within your power to grant? Francois returned with a question. The situation was clearly one where Tsukasa had most of the power. She would not be able to fight him off, or run away from him. His physique was clearly superior in all aspects, so she would not be able to outrun him, or outstam him by any stretch of the imagination. Or will my refusal result in Master Ryusui being killed? Please be straightforward. If you refuse, yes, he will be killed. Tsukasa took no pleasure in saying those words. I see. Then my hand has been forced. Show me to where you keep your ingredients, and I shall see what I can do. Francois took his words in stride, and then briskly walked in the direction she could smell primitively cooked meats. Of course, without wheat or potatoes, I doubt that any ramen I make could satisfy the taste of a god. Before I begin, may I meet this god, and ask him what his preferred flavors are? Francois stopped walking. Tsukasa frowned. Right, no ramen made would matter if it also didn't suit Naruto's taste buds. This came with risk though, because if Francois talked to Naruto and told him what they had threatened her with, then it was possible that Ryusui would no longer be a good hostage to use against her. Breaking Ryusui may result in Naruto's fury being unleashed against them. But Francois was their only hope for good ramen that could please a god. Unless they could find another 5-star chef in Japan, then they would lose to Senku and whatever ramen he used science to produce. Is there an issue with my request, or do you honestly expect me to make a meal for a god without first knowing the preferences of the god in question? Francois asked as she turned to face Tsukasa. And she could feel it. The balance of power shifted out of Tsukasa's favor with that question, because the implication that no matter what chef he awakened, all of them would have to meet the god in person could mean they could betray him and switch sides. He had to let her go to this god, but he also had to make sure she couldn't betray him. It was a terrifying position to be in for a leader. There is no problem with your request, I will escort you there myself. The next day. Hold, what business do you have, leader of an enemy tribe? Kinro asked as he held his spear up towards Tsukasa. Though he knew he stood no chance at all against this man. He looked back towards where Naruto was, in the hopes that Naruto was actually in one of his usual spots. He glanced at his brother, who was sweating in mild fear. Oh, right, you won't attack us, not with Lord Naruto watching over, and who is this cutie? Ginro slid up towards Francois. I see Lord Naruto, which means Narutomaki. Fish cake should definitely be an ingredient. White fish fillet, eggs, sugar, salt, and mirin will be needed. Pork or beef for the meat, though maybe it can be substituted with wild boar. Francois ignored Ginro and started to rub her chin in thought over what ingredients she would need for the ramen sides. She glanced towards Kinro, and saw his glare towards her, and he then glared at Tsukasa. We wish to speak to Lord Naruto. Tsukasa stated. He ignored the spear pointed at his face. Ginro, go and get Kohaku, she should know where Lord Naruto is. Kinro stated to his brother as he lowered his spear. And he looked at Tsukasa with suspicion. Still, he had no right to stop anyone who wished to speak to Naruto. Francois froze when she saw a man walking across the bridge towards them. And from deep within her core she felt herself being consumed by the raw definition of power. His blue eyes were visible even from where he stood, and multiple beings saying his name. He seemed to have brought them to his attention. His clothes were casual clothes, not unlike modern-day clothing of her time, but it made him stand out very much with the primitive people around him. I see. Francois whispered as she got it. Against her will, she bowed to Naruto when a great pressure existed on her shoulders, and the bridge started to form small cracks on it. She looked and saw that Ginro and Kinro were bowing as well. And then she glanced towards Tsukasa as the man had been forced to his knees by the same pressure. She glanced towards the village, and saw everyone was forced to bow. Naruto's body had a faint yellow glow to it around his shoulders. He was exuding some kind of divine power that put pressure down on them, forcing all within range to bow before him. She started to sweat, because just the effort it took to lift her head up and look at Naruto was immense. Tsukasa and Francois, I see, so that is what is happening. Naruto felt neither of them resist his connection to their hearts when his chakra came in contact with their bodies. It wasn't quite mind reading, but he could see the recent things that were in their hearts. He could see Tsukasa pouring liquid over a statue of Francois. And he could also see Francois's heart had the statue of a man that was being held hostage. He knows my name. Francois was shocked. The man knew her name without asking. And this is Ryusui, right? Naruto asked, and Tsukasa looked up towards Naruto. His eyes widened. Naruto had Ryusui's statue next to him, and he realized that Naruto must have gone there and collected it the second he understood the situation. It happened in the blink of an eye. 1 second Naruto had been standing alone, and the next he had collected Ryusui's statue and brought it back to the bridge. Tsukasa glanced at Francois, and she was staring up at Naruto with the understanding that she wasn't dealing with a mere man. She also understood that there was no more hostage situation. Yes, that is Master Ryusui. Francois pointed out. According to Kohaku, Senku had told her the people in these statues can break free if the energy keeping them as statues runs out, and they decide to wake up. Naruto had his hand on the statue, and his hand glowed golden. His hand sank into the statue. He felt Ryusui wake up from his slumber inside of the statue, once Naruto connected his heart to Ryusui and woke him up by force. Crack! The stone shattered, and a flesh and bone Ryusui fell forward onto the wooden bridge. Naruto's hand phased out of the man once Naruto had overcharged him with enough chakra that his body needed to expend a ton of calories in order to process the energy, and all of those calories came from the stone binding the man. He can awaken the stone with just a touch. Tsukasa looked at Naruto with his eyes widened, and he wasn't the only one who had been stunned. Naruto glanced at the naked Ryusui, and then at Francois. There, the hostage situation is over now. You have your master Ryusui. And Tsukasa, I won't stand for you making ramen with blood. If you want to make ramen for me, then do it without blackmailing somebody else to do it for you. I won't. Enjoy ramen made from the suffering of others. Naruto gave Tsukasa that one bit of advice, and he grabbed the knocked out Ryusui and carried him over his shoulder. Naruto was sure it would be a few days before Ryusui woke up. Since he had been forced awake with chakra for the purpose of breaking out of his statue form. The shock of being forced awake, and then forced out of his stone form, had caused him to fall back into a sleep. Lord Naruto, you can awaken the stone people from their slumber. Ginro shouted in shock. It seems I can, Naruto stated. Kohaku liked to talk about the things she learned from Senku. And he knew that he could use chakra to force Ryusui to burn a ton of calories at once with the physical energy needed. After that, he could use the spiritual energies to force Ryusui to wake up and break free. He just had the idea based on what Kohaku yapped to him about. Lord Naruto, I owe you a debt I can never repay. Francois stated. No, you don't owe me a debt or anything stupid like that. I saved your greedy boss, because I didn't want Tsukasa making blood ramen with a hostage situation. This was me being selfish, and nothing more than that. Naruto carried Ryusui with him towards the village. Of course now Tsukasa doesn't have a hostage, and I'm sure you won't be welcome back with him since any ramen you make will taste disgusting to me. I don't accept ramen made from hate as ramen. Naruto stated. Francois ran past Ginro and Kinro, though Tsukasa made no motion to stop her, since Naruto had been right. Naruto would refuse any ramen offered to him. Why Francois if he had forced her to make it, since it would be a ramen made with hate? This is the power and mercy of a god. Francois looked towards her naked employer on Naruto's shoulder, and then at Naruto's bored face. Take him to a hut and look over him, make sure he is healthy. I'm going to take a nap now, so don't wake me up unless there is an emergency. Naruto handed Ryusui off to a grown man of the village. And then he jumped 200 feet across the village in one leap. He landed on top of a log cabin. Yes, Lord Naruto. All of these log cabins, they look freshly built. Francois though. UGHT as she looked at the 17 new log cabins that were in the village. This is fine craftsmanship. You must have an excellent worker. Francois pointed out to one of the villagers. It wasn't a craftsman. It was Lord Naruto. The other day, he told us anyone who brought him food would be rewarded with a blessing. We all fed him and the next morning all our huts were replaced by these houses. Single quote. He built an entire village in a single night. How could one man do such a thing? It would take at least 100 skilled men to do well. Apparently he is a god. Building log cabins must not be a real challenge for a god. Francois looked at Naruto, who had fallen asleep on top of a cabin within moments of laying down. In a single night he replaced all of these people's huts with cabins. The insides of the cabins were extremely basic. But even a basic log cabin was leagues better than a hut. She could imagine that Naruto had done this purely because he had been in the mood at the moment to help these people. But he didn't want them to feel like they owed him their thanks. Instead, he told them to feed him, and the cabins were their rewards for feeding him. Who is this outsider? A man asked as Francois walked in a cabin. This is a visitor that came with Lord Naruto. I see, then stay in the village as long as you want, but be prepared to work for your food. We don't feed freeloaders here. I will strive to offer the best service. Francois bowed to the man that she assumed was the chief of the village. She glanced out of the log cabin, and saw a beautiful young woman climbing up the side of a cabin to talk to Naruto. And may I ask you, can you tell me Lord Naruto's story? Francois asked. She would be foolish to try and not learn more about this local god. Chrome is the winner of the tournament. Ha, I did it. Chrome whispered through blood dripping down his massively swollen face. He looked the small metal device that was attached to a battery in his sleeve that Senku had made for him. His arm was wrapped up to hide the wires going from his sleeve to his hand, where he would touch somebody and electrocute them. A unconscious Magma was on the ground. Of course, even with this stun gun that he and Senku made, he still needed to actually make contact to Magma in order for it to work. His eyes were blurry, and he looked towards Naruto, who had given him the idea. Naruto had held the wrath of the sky in the palm of his hand. He had told Senku that he had witnessed Naruto hold lightning, and Senku had mentioned a stun gun, so they created one for him. To use against his opponents in the tournament that would decide who would become Ruri's husband. He continued to look at Naruto, who hadn't joined the tournament, and was simply content to wait and see who the winner would be. Naruto smirked down at Chrome. He sent him a thumbs up. Did you know that Chrome was going to win? Kohaku asked, standing next to Naruto after she climbed to the top of the cabin he was on. She had been worried for her sister when Naruto never entered the tournament, but after seeing Chrome manage to pull off an impossible win, she realized that she may have been worried for nothing. Of course I did. How? Quote, if he really loved Ruri as much as I think he does, then nothing was going to stop Chrome from winning. If I entered the tournament, I wouldn't be able to lose. Him in the eyes and disrespect his feelings by forfeiting to him. I knew Chrome would win. Naruto had confidence that the scientist would find some way to bullshit his path to victory, but that would be impossible if he had entered the tournament and stood in his way. Chrome had taken a lot of beatings though. He collapsed to his butt, the relief washed over him, and Ruri rushed to his side with tears of joy leaking from each eye. I guess that makes Chrome my brother. Kohaku wasn't sure how to feel about Chrome now being the chief of the village, or what that meant for the rules going forward. She glanced towards her father, who didn't seem pleased that Chrome had won, but also didn't seem displeased either. Chrome was now married to Ruri, since he won the tournament, and Ruri's illness had been cured. You know, if he hadn't won, then Magma would be the village chief, and he would have declared open war against Tsukasa and his Kingdom of Might. Kohaku pointed out. Then he would declare war. And the warriors who went to fight would die. Chrome was determined to win, and he wasn't about to let anyone who would hurt Ruri get in the way of that. Of course, if Magma would only be the chief for a few weeks before Tsukasa killed him. Naruto reminded her that the village chief wouldn't have been Magma for very long before the position was surrendered to somebody who wasn't dead. Hey guys, everyone is getting ready for a huge feast to celebrate Chrome winning. And that Senku guy is being allowed into the village, and he has Francois with him. Suika climbed to the roof to tell them what was going on. Minutes later. That scent. Yeah, you must recognize this is what you've been craving. We can thank Tsukasa for reviving Francois, the final piece of the puzzle we needed to make high-quality ramen. Senku finished pushing the mobile ramen stand across the bridge, and the scent of the still hot broth got a lot of people very interested in what he had made. Naruto was interested as well. That didn't have the bitter smell of fox millet. Yes, once I learned of Senku making ramen, I sought him out to help him. Consider it my thanks for awakening Master Ryusui. Fr. Answa bowed to Naruto very politely as she got behind the stand, and she uncovered the different ingredients that had been stored away. There were slices of wild boar meat, used to imitate pork after being massaged and tenderized. Naruto could see miso soup being uncovered as well, and narutomaki being cut up into small slices. He stood to the side as many villagers crowded around the cart at the delicious smell. Yeah, I tasted this last night, and it gave me the energy I needed today. Take this super bad ramen, the ramen of science. Chrome, through his injuries and supported by Ruri, saddled up to Naruto and bragged to Naruto. Good thing Naruto knew that super bad meant super good when coming from Chrome. If he didn't know Chrome's unique way of talking, he would have lost all interest in the ramen. Where did the Naruto reached out, and he picked up some of the noodles before they could be placed in the broth. I see these noodles are potato noodles. Without wheat, this is the closest thing. Naruto smiled in great interest when he saw Francois placed all the ingredients gathered together in bowls for the villagers. It was 20 minutes before everyone got a bowl, and they all started to dig in together. Delicious. Senku ignored everyone else and focused all his attention on Naruto as the man slurped up a mouthful of noodles, and he was grinning nervously at seeing Naruto not have much of a reaction. This ramen was the best ramen I ever had, so if anything could win his heart to my side, it would be this. This ramen took so much effort my forearms are still or from making the noodles. Come on Naruto, shout out how delicious this ramen is. Senku had a bead of sweat running down his face as he looked forward to Naruto's reaction. Naruto hummed a little as he ate. The lack of shouting, delicious, turned Francois' attention on Naruto as well as the woman looked at him, her brow furrowing. She had expected Naruto to scream out about how delicious her ramen was. But it seemed to her that he was just enjoying the ramen. Well, Lord Naruto? Francois asked. It's good. Naruto answered as he passed her back the empty bowl. Just good. Senku stepped back in shock. Yeah, it's good ramen. Definitely a 8 out of 10. High marks all around. Good job Francois, this was the 9th best ramen I've ever eaten. Naruto complimented Francois on how well she cooked the ramen. It had been very good. But he had many forms of ramen in his travels around the land of fire that were just way better. Also, Ichiraku ramen blew this ramen out of the water with flavor. Or in how dense it was with ingredients. I see, Francois was frowning. Only an 8 out of 10. Not even an A, but instead he ranked her creation as AB on the grading scale, meaning that she had not rated a ramen that was fit for a god after all. She cursed under her breath, and she looked at the inferior ingredients that could have been to blame for such a low score being given. She was a 5-star chef, one of the best in the world. But she had failed to get even an A score from Naruto. Were her skills rusty from being frozen in stone? It's the best meal I've ever eaten. Kohaku was slurping up her second bowl of ramen like a woman possessed with gluttony. She had eaten all the other ramens that Senku had made to try and perfect this recipe, but this was the first time she had tasted the results of his research. You're crazy Naruto, this ramen is crazy good. It's very good, but the sea salt doesn't pair well with this boar-based pork. Also, the potato noodles are a great substitute for wheat. But potato-based noodles just don't have the same firmness to them. The spices were great, and this miso is great, but it would be better if it had soaked in some mushrooms too. The kelp is too tough. It should have been dried and then rehydrated. Naruto had a lot of criticisms about what would make the ramen better. I would have replaced the boar-based pork with bear meat that has been soaked in milk. Or maybe even shrimp to go with the sea salt. Shrimp would have been better than pork for this type of ramen. Naruto continued with changes he would have made. So no chance of you protecting me from Tsukasa, then I guess back to the drawing. Since I was craving ramen, and I can see you worked really hard, I'll protect you from Tsukasa until next spring. Naruto state. D as he helped Francois give a second bowl of ramen to Suika, who was gushing over the ramen. That's it. Yeah, I never demanded the best ramen of my life. I just wanted ramen that was produced by the efforts of your own work. I can see your arms trembling right now. You put some real effort into this. Even though I don't like you, I respect the effort you put into this. Naruto stated as he helped himself to a second bowl of ramen after giving another bowl to Suika. He never said the ramen had to be perfect. He wasn't some stuck-up snob that demanded the best. All he wanted was for Senku to put in the effort and show him the fruits of his labor. Senku had gone above and beyond what Naruto had expected of him. He just didn't like Senku personally, but he accepted this as a form of payment. So you'll help me, great. With your help. No, I'm not interested in helping you. I'll protect you from Tsukasa, that's it. I don't know anything about science. I'll leave one of my clones with you to protect you. Naruto stated. Since just because he agreed to be a bodyguard until the start of spring didn't mean he agreed to put in a ton of work to help Senku achieve whatever he wanted. Oh, and Chrome, congrats on your wedding. You earned it. Naruto told Chrome with a grin. Chrome had passed out already. Naruto started to sweat. You just looked really stupid. Kohaku pointed out to him. Naruto karate chopped the bottom of the bowl she was eating, and knocked it out of her hands, and into his hands. He slurped up all of her noodles. Kohaku doesn't get any more ramen tonight. Naruto stated to Francois. Yes, I understand. Clone. Senku asked with a raised eyebrow. Oh, yeah, you weren't there for it. The other day, I saw Naruto make like hundreds of copies of himself. Senku froze. His brain stopped working. A hot springs bath. This feels so good. It would be nicer if he could enjoy this without being surrounded by the kids and village elderly who had followed him too. The small pond just outside of the village. Naruto leaned back with his face pointed towards the sky. It was winter now. The snow was falling, the sky was cloudy, the air had a bitter cold to it, and he had wanted to enjoy a hot springs bath under this great weather. The chill of the air with the heat of the bath, and a teensy bit of wine from the village had been such a great combination. Things had changed since Chrome became village chief. For starters, he had told Senku everything Ruri told him about the 100 tales, or whatever those were. Now they were more focused on science than ever before. At the end of every day, Naruto got memories of the clone he left with Senku always trying to trick the clone into explaining the technology behind how it existed. Can I have a little, teensy sip of wine too? Suika whispered to Naruto as she got to his side. She saw the other adults in the pond were sipping at wine just like Naruto, though the elderly were staying close to each other and were helping the young kids wash up. Since she didn't have any family, the only person she could ask for permission to drink wine or bathe at the hot springs was Naruto. Well, T.'s hot springs wouldn't exist without Naruto. It wasn't a hot springs. It was just a pond connected to a river, and Naruto would enter the cold water, and after a small amount of time the cold water would turn hot. Steam came off of Naruto's body, and the air around them turned steamy. Suika, you're too young to drink wine. And more people came. Naruto closed his eyes as he looked towards Ruri and Kohaku, who had come to his once private hot springs. Here, just a sip, Suika. Naruto passed the wine to Suika anyway, despite Ruri not wanting the child to even taste wine. Naruto tipped an extremely small amount of booze into her mouth, just enough for her to get a taste of it and nothing more. Lord Naruto. Oh shush, this much won't hurt. Naruto sipped the rest of the wine out of the saucer. And he laid it next to the ground. He wasn't so prudish as to not give a minor the smallest of sips of wine, not when the amount of wine she drank would amount to no more than enough to cover his thumbnail. Technically, he was only 19 and shouldn't be drinking, but considering he was given wine as a present all the time, he figured he could drink super small amounts. So long as he never got tipsy, it was fine. A single small saucer of wine was what he limited himself to, just enough to give him a little bit of internal warmth from it. Wow, it tastes so bitter it doesn't taste that good. Suika had been happy to try wine at first when she tasted the sweetness, but then she got hit by the bitter aftertaste of it and was displeased. She sat on Naruto's thigh and looked up towards Kohaku. who wasn't pleased with Naruto letting her drink, but wasn't going to be vocal about it either. She seemed conflicted, but only because her sister seemed against it. Kohaku lifted her dress over her head and tossed it to the snowy ground, as well as her overcoat with it. She stripped naked and took her shoes off, before she took a dip in the water as well. She moved her body so that only the top third of her breasts was above the water, but she also kept her hair tied up in its usual style. Wow, this is so nice. Usually a hot springs trip needs you to go to the top of the mountain. I didn't know we have one so close by. Kohaku gave in to her urges and leaned back, about 5 feet away from Naruto, but still closer towards the elderly couple that were having a conversation with each other. Chrome has been a very uncertain village chief. It kind of feels like that Senku lad is the village chief. It does. Hey, Chrome is doing his best, but it just so happens Senku is. Ruri turned red in the face at her husband being talked about behind his back, only to sigh when she realized that Chrome hadn't been living up to his new title. Her father was still pretty much doing all the village chief duties, like securing winter supplies, organizing hunting parties, and getting people ready to fish on their small boats. Chrome was making himself into a great scientist, but he just didn't have it in him to lead the village. Kohaku, it's not appropriate to strip naked in front of a boy. Ruri turned to her sister. Kohaku pointed to Naruto. Do you really think this guy hasn't seen a lot of naked girls? I don't have anything he hasn't seen 1,000 times before. Kohaku didn't really think she was showing Naruto anything that would offend him, or would awaken his sexual desires for the first time. She was sure that he had seen more naked women in his life than she had ever met in hers. Naruto shrugged. My teacher when I was a kid took me to mixed bathing hot springs plenty. And Naruto didn't mention that he would sometimes transform into a girl to go into the girl's side as a kid, or that he would peek on the women's side when he was a young teen. He stopped doing all of that when he came back to the village after his training trip, and he hadn't really gotten the urge as an adult to do that. Well, not he could just visit the mixed bathing whenever he wanted, and as the village hero. If he went then tons of hot women would follow him. It was kind of why he never went as an adult, because he didn't want to abuse his status to see tons of naked girls. Also, because tons of girls between the ages of 8 years old and 50 years old would flirt with him. It was weird. See, he's seen plenty of naked girls. Kohaku deadpanned. I can see I'm outnumbered. Well, Lord Naruto. Can you look away? Ruri stated as she decided that she wanted to take a bath as well. Naruto closed his eyes and looked up. So Ruri stripped naked, and Naruto could tell when she was in the water. Once she was in the water enough to cover herself, he opened his eyes back up and saw that Ruri was sitting on Kohaku's other side, further away from him. She was married to Chrome. This feels so good, I should come here with Chrome. Ruri whispered. I know, I want to come here more often. Is the water getting a little colder? Kohaku asked as she noted the ste. On the water was getting a little less steamy. It was still warm, but it wasn't quite as hot as it was when she got in. Naruto clapped his hands together. Steam erupted from his left arm and hand, and he dipped his hand under the water. Almost instantly, the water right around his hand sizzled and bubbled, and the heat of the water was cranked back up to hot springs temps. Naruto kept his hand under the water, and the air kept getting steamier as the water around his hand boiled. It became a little harder to see people, but that was fine too. Have you been avoiding Ryusui? Who? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. Ryusui. The guy that Francois calls Master E's loud, and he's kind of greedy. Ruri pointed out the guy that Naruto broke out of the stone. She looked into Naruto's face, and saw that he really had no memory at all of who she was talking about. Did you forget the guy you broke out of the stone? It's been months, and he keeps trying to talk to you. Ruri was sweating from the hot springs. And now she was sweating more from the surprise. Did Naruto really not notice? Naruto thought about it. I guess that sounds familiar, but I've been ignoring everyone asking me for things lately. Like the old man Kaseki, he's been asking me to fix his back pain, but I can't fix that. Everyone has been asking me for unreasonable things lately, like one of the kids was asking me to take him to the moon. Since I came from a moon. Naruto was just kind of getting fed up with being treated like a god that could solve all their problems, or show them tons of amazing things. He was just himself. I mean, can't you take the kid to the moon? Ruri was sure that was within his power. I can breathe in space, but that is because I have chakra which none of you have. If I took any of you up there with me, you would all die before we left the atmosphere. Naruto waved off the idea that he could just take them to space for fun and games. He could go up there at any point he wanted to. But it would be a solo trip for him. Also, I don't want Senku figuring out I can go up there, because he's already been annoying my clone to find out how it works. There is no way he wou. Eldant want me to take him and collect the rare metals I've been finding up there. Naruto stated. You've been to the moon recently. Yep, I've been making sure there aren't any assholes up there this time. I mean, there just wasn't a lot that I noticed up there in the few hours I walked around. Naruto didn't make his trip very long. He noticed some technology up there in the form of what Lu Ked like some kind of thing for people to travel in, and a whole bunch of small decivs that were shaped like twisted knots, but nothing worth mentioning other than that. No organic life at all. He wa NTED to make sure that there were no Otsutsuki bastards on the moon in this world, and if he found any, he would kill them for the sake of the planet. Oh, don't tell Senku I can go up to the moon. Also, Naruto tilted his head and looked towards people coming through the trees. Francois and Ryusui. With the ramen stall. Ha ha, you've a tricky guy to track down, but I expect no less from an actual god. Ryusui snapped his fingers and pointed at Naruto. Kohaku and Ruri covered their breasts and dropped lower into the water. Lord Naruto, please forgive the disturbance while you bathe. Master Ryusui has been wanting to thank you. And I've been wanting you to try a new ramen I've spent time developing. Francois stated with a gleam in her eyes as she put the ramen together into a bowl. Shish. He walked towards Naruto and offered the ramen to him. He tasted it. This is pretty good. Naruto didn't have any complaints. The best you've ever had? Francois asked with a determined fire in her eyes. No, but it's really good. A little lighter on the salt, and I see you went with sea bass for the meat. Not a bad choice, it's really tasty, but I don't like menma, so that brings this down a lot. Just a personal preference. Naruto slurped up the bowl, but he purposely didn't eat the menma that was in the bowl. He handed it back to Francois, who frowned but nodded. She didn't know he didn't like menma. A tongue that even Francois can't please. Truly, you are a worthy person to add to my path. It makes me want you even more. Ryusui stated. I'm more than pleased though, the ramen is really good, it just isn't the best. Naruto deadpanned, since he didn't see what the big deal was with Francois, ramen not being the best he had ever had. It was still easily in the top 10 every single time he tried it. It had never entered the top 5, but it never dropped outside of top 10. That was a huge compliment from him, who had eaten ramen from all other his world, and had tasted tons of different instant ramen flavors as well. Nobody knew ramen better than him, so being in his top 10 was already a super impressive feat. Being in the mere top 10 is not enough. I promise, I will provide why. Owe you a service worthy of being the top ramen you've ever tried. Francois had brought enough ramen to share, so she started to serve bowls to all the elderly and children who were in the hot springs. Just curious. But where did this ramen rank? Francois asked. I don't, maybe like 7th. Naruto knew it was in the top 10, but if you asked him for specifics, he would have a hard time placing it. His was like the 20th bowl of ramen that Francois had fed him, and they improved with each attempt. Once you got into the top 10, it really was hard to place accurately, because it depended on his mood at the time. It was easy to be better than 9th place, but worse than 8th. The gap between 6 and 5 was pretty big as well. I see I've placed 7th 8 times now. I'll try and find better ingredients. Francois was delighted that everyone else was gushing over the ramen, but she looked at the hardest customer to please, which was the one guy who seemed to know almost everything about ramen. She would have never imagined that he wouldn't like menma though. Join me. No. Naruto responded instantly to Ryusui. That was quick. It makes me want you more though. Shoo, I'm taking a bath, shoo, shoo. Naruto gestured for Ryusui to go away. It was already awkward enough to be with Kohaku and Ruri in the bath, but to have people who weren't even naked standing outside of the water just made things even worse. Not until Naruto clapped his hands together. A wall of earth formed around the pond between Ryusui and Naruto, and it was tall enough that he wasn't about to be able to climb it. Instantly, Ryusui's voice was shut out. Naruto sighed in relief at the privacy for the people bathing. He tasted ramen on his lips. Maybe it was actually 6th place, definitely not 5th though. Naruto W. Old have ranked it much higher if not for the menma for sure. Menma was the one ingredient he hated in ramen. Midwinter was harsh. It was a harsh and bitter cold for the village, but with the homes Naruto had built for the village, and the heating system Senku had built for them, the once harsh season of winter became far more comfortable than it usually was. People in the village had drawn winter fur, in that all their clothes were lined with animal fur, and they had thick coats with animal fur around the edges of it. Hot soup was the common meals during the winter. This was also tea, season of more casual wine consumption. It sure would be nice to have somebody fix my back for me. It sure would be nice if somebody could fix your back, but too bad nobody who can do that is here. Naruto stated to Kaseki, who was keeping the fire in the middle of the village lit and fueled with homemade charcoal. The fire in the middle of the village was connected to metal pipes that were KED-like heat transfers to send the heat into all of the homes. But it was primitive. It required somebody to tend to the fire all night long, so each night a different person was tasked with making sure that the flames never went out and tended to it. For his part, nobody ever asked him to do it, but he would have done it if asked. He usually went to sleep during the day and took frequent naps, so he was usually awake for about half of the night. Old man Kaseki was a hell of a muscular midget of an old man. So what was the land of the gods like? Kaseki asked Naruto. Wouldn't know, so I can't answer. Naruto stayed casual, since he was never the one who put the label of God on himself. He just didn't bother arguing at this point with people who were never going to believe him on being a human. Keep working hard, treating your village well, and never giving up on kindness, then I'm sure whatever waits for you on the other side. Naruto heard the sound of snow crunching. It was a tired Kohaku. I'll take over from here, Kaseki. Kohaku stated as she looked up towards Naruto, and he glanced down from the snow-covered roof at her as well. I can't sleep, and Ruri is being noisy with Chrome. Kohaku complained as she sat down on a log, and tossed some sticks into the flames. She yawned again, before sticking her hands out to enjoy the warmth for herself. Kaseki giggled behind his hand. Naruto chuckled. Newlyweds getting frisky was funny. Well, I'll let you two enjoy some alone time. Kaseki stated as he glanced up at Naruto, and when he passed by Kohaku, he placed a hand on her shoulder. You're the one who has his favor, do me a favor, can you convince him to fix my back? Kaseki whispered as he glanced up at Naruto once more, hoping Naruto did not hear him pleading with Kohaku. I'll try my best. That a girl? Kaseki went into the home he stayed in, and Naruto scoffed, before he jumped off the snow-covered roof, and landed on a log nearby Kohaku as well. You know I can't fix his back. I don't know what the limits of your power actually are, to be totally fair. Kohaku trusted that Naruto wasn't laying, but part of her believed it was possible that Naruto did have some way to fix the old man's back that even he didn't know about. Naruto scoffed. Old man disease is not a disease I have the cure for. We all grow old, and while I can revive dead people, there are limits to what I can revive. Naruto had revived Obito from death, but it was only a temporary revival due to the fact that Obito had been very freshly dead, and the cause of his death had been from having the Geto Mazo ripped from his soul. Obito died the death of a Jinchuriki extraction. When Naruto had revived him from death, that revival had only been a temporary fix, and Obito had still been doomed to die after a while due to the nature of that death's toll on his body. He couldn't revive people who died from disease and organ failure, and he couldn't revive people who were missing vital organs. Well, he could, but they would instantly die again, so what was the point? Are you sure you're not a god, because that sounds like something only a god can do? Kohaku stated plainly, since from what little she knew of the world, humans couldn't revive the dead. Naruto nodded. Yeah, tons of people can revive the dead if the conditions are right. Let's say a person is dead for a few minutes because they drowned. Well, they can be revived as easily as somebody getting the water out of their lungs, and getting their heart pumping again. People get revived from death all the time. I'm just able to revive people from more forms of death. Naruto knew that true death was when you couldn't be revived anymore, but that was death with a big D. Death with a little d was when the body was dead. But there was a chance you could be revived. If somebody could be revived, he could revive them. If they could not be revived, he could not revive them. Oh, have you seen a lot of people die? Kohaku asked him a deep question. The way he talked about death so casually was kind of weird. I've seen thousands of people die. Thousands upon thousands of people that I couldn't save, some very close to me. Some I didn't know at all. Naruto thought of Neji and the many other ninja who died during the Fourth Great Ninja War. He and his shadow clones had seen countless ninja die during that time. And so many that had to be buried in empty graves because their bodies had been destroyed beyond reclamation. And no, before you ask, it doesn't get easier to see people you care about die. It always hurts. But as you experience it more, you just learn better ways to handle the pain, and live with it. Naruto would never be used to death. He was used to the pain, and had learned how to deal with his pain in a healthy way where he could rest, recover, and go on with his life. She touched him. She leaned her head against his shoulder. A few years ago, there was a really bad winter. A famine disease went through the village, and a lot of people died. I was really young, so I don't remember it much. I lost my mom, but I don't remember her that well. I've never really had to deal with somebody close to me dying. Kohaku stared into the flames. The snow, the flames, the night sky. The mood was very serene, and it brought emotion out of her. If you had been here, maybe. Kohaku, I'm 19. If you were a kid, then I would have been a kid too. Even if I had been here, I couldn't have saved her. I wasn't born perfect, and I'm not perfect to this day. I'm strong and have a lot of powers. But I can't solve everything. I can't fix Kaseki's back, I can't help Senku with his science crap, and fix every problem everyone has. All I have the power to do, is to do the stuff within my power. Naruto corrected her mindset. He wasn't almighty, all-knowing, and he didn't have the ability to fix all things wrong with the world by himself. He only got to where he was now because he made friends and knew how to ask for help. Harsh, but I understand. Each of us has our own part to play, our own power to use. So I do have a favor to ask you, something that may be in your power. Naruto was silent. There is a lot of the world I've never seen, and I don't know anything about it. Will you take me out there? I want to see things I've never seen. There are so many things that I know nothing about. Kohaku looked up towards the sky, and her eyes reflected the stars in the sky. Her eyes were beautiful in that moment. He smiled. If I ever leave the village, I'll take you with me. Naruto promised her that much at least. She smiled. Also, can you fix old man Kaseki's back? He sighed. You had to ask. Naruto could tell she was joking when she snorted with laughter. And he laughed back with her. Okay, that was a good joke just for that. Naruto grabbed a handful of snow off the ground behind them. He dropped it between her breasts, right in the cleavage. Cold. Ha. Naruto gave a hearty laugh. Her reaction was priceless. Operation Unknown Tech. Did they really think I don't know they are following me, or that I don't know about their Operation Unknown Tech? Naruto rolled his eyes as he walked towards the forest, and he could feel Senku, Chrome, Kohaku, and even little Suika were following him while trying to stay as hidden as possible. The snow was fresh on the ground, though it should have been later in the winter with the temps warming up. It was a long and would have been a harsh winter for the village in most circumstances. Naruto noticed the village was running low on coal and firewood. He was also bored, so he was going to refill it for them while they were all busy. A chakra blade came out of Naruto's hand, pure wind. Elemental nature chakra that he formed into the shape of a clawed chakra hand with a sword coming out of his wrist. It was the sharpest blade in the universe. This was the same blade he used to cut off Kagaya's arm. And it sliced through the trees and created logs with extreme ease. Naruto lazily swiped at the tree in front of him, and it fell to pieces in front of him. Naruto glanced back where the others were hiding. And he rolled his eyes. His shadow clone had overheard Senku talking about his plan. Why are we watching him? Kohaku had no clue why they were following Naruto. No matter how much I ask. His clone refuses to tell me how any of this stuff is possible. Well, if I observe him and record what I find, maybe I can, but what the hell is that? Senku wrote down what he was witnessing. Naruto had sprouted some kind of ethereal blade from his body, which didn't make scientific sense at all. It was magic. When Senku called it magic, what he actually meant was that it was science he had no explanation for. Senku wasn't against the concept of magic, ghosts, or the supernatural. They had never been proven to him, but he was willing to admit that if they could be proven, he would support their existence. The more he watched Naruto, the more he started to believe that there might not be an easy scientific explanation for how he did what he did. Naruto spawned a large orange hand from his back, and he tossed the chopped up logs off the ground into the palm of the hand. 1. Showing. Spawns ethereal blades and hands from his body. Possible explanation. Remotely controlled nanomachines. Later. I don't understand how he does that either. Even if his body can handle the heat, he should have run out of water in his body with how much steam his body is putting off. Senku was watching Naruto take a bath. Oh, it's bath time. Sit down Kohaku, he'll find us. Chrome grabbed Kohaku and prevented her from stripping naked so that she could join Naruto in the hot springs. A lot of elderly people and children were walking towards Naruto in his homemade hot springs. Naruto sighed. I never get to take a bath alone anymore. The second people notice the steam, they come to take a bath with me. Naruto hadn't bathed by himself in over a month at this point. The fact he was transforming his chakra into pure steam by boiling it made for an extremely good bath for everyone. The water that was boiled with his chakra was rich and filled with life, so people who bathed in it were bathed in his chakra. It eased their aches and pains, though it didn't fix them completely. Senku had been watching him for 40 minutes. Naruto is 180 centimeters tall, and with his lean muscle, his body water content should be at about 73%. His body water content should be close to 12 gallons of water. But at the rate of steam he's ejected from his body, he's put off close to 189 gallons of water as steam. He's exceeded the amount of water his body size and weight should hold. Senku didn't know where Naruto was hydrating his body. But he knew that Naruto had exceeded the limits of what a human body could hold in water content. It was amazing, but it broke the laws of nature. Naruto had put out more steam than his body had mass. Naruto broke the law of conservation of mass. He was creating mass that did not exist before he created it, meaning that Naruto was adding mass to the universe and his surroundings. He was reaching into a divine realm of science that broke the established rules of the universe. 2. Showing. Creating steam for a bath. Law broken. Conservation of mass, and boiling water exceeding his body water content. Later. Does it weird you guys out that we watched Naruto take a bath? Suika whispered to Chrome. I mean, don't you take baths with him, it isn't that difference. Anyway. We spied on him for science, that makes it okay. Chrome justified their actions to Suika. While seeing Naruto naked didn't bother anyone there for different reasons, the fact was that they had invaded his private time. Then again, the old and kids had invaded his private time too so they could have a hot bath. Shush, that's a new one. Kohaku hadn't seen this new ability that Naruto was using. Senku was rubbing his chin in deep thought. His body contains highly potent acid. Senku was so curious when a white liquid came out of Naruto and splashed on a group of mushrooms on the ground. And all the mushrooms were instantly dissolved in an extremely potent acid. Naruto's hand on the other hand was perfectly safe as he dug through the acid-covered ground, and made sure that he had destroyed all the mushrooms. There, these poisonous mushrooms were a bit close to the village, would have been bad if anyone ate them. Naruto stood back up as his wolf wisdom decay destro. Yed the mushrooms all the way to the root, and in such a way where none of the mushrooms had the chance to spread their spores around and regrow. While what he did not seem impressive, Senku was impressed. When Naruto walked away, Senku got up and rushed to the spot where the mushrooms had been. He looked at the white acid that was seeping deeper into the ground. Senku watched as it destroyed not just the mushrooms, but also the ground itself. He took a glass vial out of his pocket, and he dipped it slightly into the acid. The glass was dissolved. Wow, not even sulfuric acid did that to glass. This can't be hydrofluoric acid, it destroyed the mushrooms and ground too quickly. Hydrofluoric acid is a weak dissolving agent, yeah, this acts way too quickly to be any known acid. Senku tossed some pieces of bark into the acid, and it was destroyed instantly as well. The acid was faster acting than any known acid, And it was dissolving even inert matter like glass, which was immune to most forms of acid. 3. Naruto produced unknown acid from his body that dissolved glass, living matter, and non-living matter. Answer: unknown. Later. I think you should give up. Why would I do that? This is fun. Senku was having the time of his life trying to make theories about how Naruto could do what he could do. Naruto was a perfect supernatural wonder, and it was almost impossible for I am to not want to study Naruto more to see what made him tick. Naruto had casually broken several unbreakable laws of the universe. What scientist worth their salt didn't want to research something that violently violated all known laws of science? Senku, Kohaku pulled his sleeve. I'm not going to Senku stated when he noticed that Kohaku's voice had come from two different directions, so he looked behind him. And he saw a disturbing sight. 2 Kohakus, 2 Chromes, 2 Suikas. He rubbed his eyes, and when he opened them he was still seeing doubles of everyone. He looked back towards Naruto, who had been observing, only to be looking at a copy of himself as well. 2 Senkus. Whoa, that's seriously bad, there are 2 of me. Chrome shouted in shock and awe when he noticed. No, there are 2 of me, I'm Chrome. The other Chrome shouted out. Well, I know I'm me, so that means that you're Naruto. Senku turned his back on the Chromes, since he could not tell them apart at all. He looked at the Naruto turned Senku. And he walked around him. How long have you the entire time? Senku could quickly figure out that Naruto had known they were following him all day. Entire time. Amazing, even your clothes changed. The clothes are casting the same kind of shadow my clothes are. This hair feels real too. Senku moved his hand above Naruto's head, and he noticed that the fake Senku hair was real as well. You have molecular control over every molecule in your body, and are able to change your chromosomes to match that of any target. You can also manipulate the mass your body has to match the mass of your target. Senku was amazed. He grabbed both Suikas by the wrist and lifted them up, and they had the exact same mass to them. Naruto changed his mass. Naruto changed his molecular structure. Naruto changed his genetics. He had changed all things about himself, except for his mind, in order to match the target he wanted to copy. It was perfect imitation in that Naruto had managed to copy all of them down to the smallest of details. It would have broken his brain to see this, were it not for the fact that he had seen Naruto break the laws of such things already. Magic. Naruto stated in Senku's voice. I can't say I agree it's magic, but it is science that transcends what science has always known as possible. Senku would call it supernatural science more than magic, since Naruto seemed to know how he was doing what he was doing. That meant there was some kind of explanation behind it. You got all the details right. I have seen you naked. Kohaku, Naruto, stated as she had her shirt looked down by Kohaku, who clapped in amusement as Naruto got all the details right. All the copies vanished. It's transformation, I can take any form I want. Naruto stated to Senku. Any form that is biological, of course. Senku corrected Naruto. Poof. Naruto turned into a large rock. Then Naruto turned back into Naruto. No, I can turn into anything I want to turn into. It doesn't matter if it's a person. I can turn into people, animals, clothes, weapons. I can turn into anything I want. Naruto corrected Senku, since he had turned into objects many times in his life. The transformation jutsu didn't have such simple restrictions on what you could turn into. You could turn into anything so long as you could picture it clearly in your head. ND then maintained focus on the image that you had. A lot of people transformed back after getting hit and losing concentration, but he was a real transformation master. That makes no sense for a human's biology to manage. Senku argued with Naruto. He then shut up. Naruto literally proved he could do it. Sorry, I'm curious how you were able to do it. Your biology is human, so your body shouldn't be. My biology isn't the same as yours is. My body has extra stuff in it that you guys don't have. Naruto stated with a deadpan tone. Senku blinked. Does it now? Senku was immensely curious about that statement. Naruto having different biology meant that he was different than a regular human. Yeah, my body has a few organs and things your body doesn't have. The extra organs in my body lets me do stuff you can't explain with science. Naruto deadpanned. His body was literally packed with extra systems to it. He had his chakra pathway, an extra circulatory system that allowed his chakra to travel to all the cells and organs in his body. Along that chakra network, he had 8 gates that regulated the flow of that chakra and strain levels. Along that chakra network, he had 361 tenketsu released chakra from network and into the other parts of his body. Senku stopped writing it down. I mean, yeah, every cell in my body is connected to my chakra pathway system. The chakra T flows through every single cell in my body, is connected to every other cell in my fine, here. Naruto cut off a little bit of his forearm and gave it to Senku. You've understand if you look at that under a microscope. Naruto walked away. The next week. Holy crap, Senku was stunned. The little bit of flesh Naruto had shared with him was not the same as a regular person's flesh. The cells in Naruto's body were connected by an extremely hard to see extra system, and his cells were connected in such a complicated and impossible way. The nucleus of each cell in Naruto's body had an extremely small vein that connected all of them together. His cells were producing energy. Even dying, the cells were producing a form of energy that Senku could not identify as electricity. If Naruto had these pathways running through his entire body, and he had control over this system, then suddenly it did make sense how he was capable of controlling the cells in his body. Naruto did have an organic energy producing system that was not found in the regular human body. Senku had cut off a little bit of his own forearm, and he had observed it as well to study all the differences that he found. It wasn't just physical. He had also taken some wild boar flesh, and he tried to graft Naruto's flesh onto the boar, and the outcome was simply outstanding. Naruto's very flesh was almost parasitic in nature. When he grafted that flesh to wild boar flesh, Naruto's flesh started to take over the boar flesh like a parasite, and transform that flesh into more Naruto flesh. Naruto's flesh and cells were intelligent and able to connect the energy signals to other life forms. The way that Naruto's cells took over the cells of other creatures it was grafted onto, changing their shape and structure, was almost like a disease in its own way. If he grafted enough of Naruto's cells onto somebody, they would turn into Naruto. Or die. The process of being transformed into Naruto could easily result in death. So Senku had not tried to graft the cells onto any living being. He didn't want to kill anyone, but the fact was that Naruto's cells were almost biologically immortal. As long as his cells were grafted onto another living being in time, it would actually be possible for a new Naruto to form out of that person as long as they survived the process of transforming into Naruto. He also tried the reverse. He took some snake flesh and grafted a little bit of it onto Naruto's flesh, and something completely different almost happened. Naruto's flesh absorbed the snake flesh, and then gained properties from it. That meant that not only was Naruto's flesh like a cancer to other creatures, but his own flesh could take in the genetics of other creatures and add to his own genetics. Naruto had unique cells capable of absorbing flesh and evolving on demand. Get it? No, I don't get it. Is this something unique to you? Senku had a clone standing behind him. No, everyone where I come from is similar. Well, the stronger you are, the stronger the effect. Anyone who has my flesh will more than likely die. A medical rule is you're not really supposed to take blood from people who aren't in your family. Naruto stated. Yamato, the only survivor of many dozens of children to be given Hashirama's cells, and ended up gaining Hashirama's genetics. Kabuto, gained the genetics of Tayuya, Kimamaru, Orochimaru. Kitamaru, Suigetsu, Karen Uzumaki, Jugo, and Sakanzen could freely use their abilities. Madara and Sasuke both gained Hashirama cells and awakened a Rinnegan, will. Madara gained the wood release and could absorb Hashirama's sage chakra. Obito had gained Hashirama cells and could also use wood release. He himself gained Hashirama's cells in his arm, and now had an even stronger regeneration factor. According to Sakura, somebody stole some of his cells and used his cells to make a drug that could turn people into pseudo-Jinchuriki. Senku deadpanned again. Let's say it like this. If you injected somebody's blood into my body, I could awaken their abilities, but if you injected my blood into their body, they could awaken my abilities, but 'cause I'm strong the chances are they would die. Naruto tried to state. So biologically, you're capable of taking in the genetic information of any creature you encounter. Perfect evolution. Senku looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. It sounded like evolution. Well, kind of. I don't know everything about it, because it's kind of forbidden to experiment on people. I do know a few people who tampered with their genetics to evolve into new forms. There was this one guy who became a complete mix and match of genetics. Naruto thought of how Kabuto's body had taken a completely different form after all his tampering. Also, there was a guy who grew a second face on his chest. Naruto remembered Madara as well. Huh. Senku was going to find himself very confused a lot. A second face. Actually, that confirmed his theory that if somebody survived the genetic process of grafting Naruto's flesh, that there was a chance that a new Naruto would be formed out of the process. A clone of Naruto could be formed out of a person if they survived the process of their body being forcefully taken over by Naruto's body. Wait a second, so let me ask, does your species reproduce by injecting themselves into other species and changing the host body? Senku wasn't worried. Naruto scoffed. No, we have sex and make babies to have kids. I'm not some alien creature that takes over a host body to invade a planet. I'm just Naruto. And I was born Naruto. I am Naruto, this is my body. It isn't a body I took over, or a body that I changed to be what it is. I'm a clone actually. The real Naruto is currently taking a bath. Naruto almost forgot he was just a clone that was watching over Senku to make sure he didn't do anything stupid with the flesh he was given. All the same, the more I learn, the less I figure out I know. And the more questions I have. Your biology is absolutely insane, but also so very close to human. Senku went back to studying. Senku was having the time of his life trying to crack open this mystery. Ishigami Village. Lord Naruto, please, talk to Chrome, he might listen to you. No thanks, you talk to him about taking his village chief responsibilities more seriously. Naruto wasn't about to take on that job of getting between a nerd and what they were nerding out over. Chrome was nerding out with Senku, and winter was coming to an end. The weather had warmed up a few degrees. And the first signs of spring were in the air. Village chief, we have a problem. I'm not village ga, what is the problem? Kokuyu asked as he scratched the back of Hai's head in the sheer annoyance that he was still doing the work of a village chief, when he should be enjoying staying out of the spotlight. He looked up towards Naruto, only to see Naruto jumped off of the roof and was walking away. In the science lab, I see, what am I looking at? Ruri asked as she looked through the glass. You're looking at some super bad science. Remember last week when I asked everyone in the village for a blood sample? Chrome asked his wife with excitement. She raised her forearm up. There was a half-healed scratch on her arm. I remember. Ruri fully remembered Chrome had used his authority as village chief to force everyone in the village to give up blood samples for the sake of science. There was a wall of blood samples that had gone black. Well, all but 3 blood samples had gone black. Well, we've been doing tests with our limited equipment, and mixing those blood samples, and what we've found out is that 3 people in this village had compatibility with Naruto. Senku walked in with Naruto's clone. So we need more of your blood so we can run more tests. Senku stated as he showed the syringe that he had created so that he could take blood from Ruri without the need for a knife. What? We tested Naruto's blood to see how it would react when mixed with blood from the rest of the village, and we found out that his blood acted like a death sentence for anyone who didn't have certain traits. Senku continued to explain. Ruri nodded. She didn't understand that. Well, Naruto's blood reacted different to different people. It completely killed off anyone's blood that didn't have blonde hair for starters. Then, anyone who didn't have blue eyes was next. Chrome explained as he showed the top section of the wall of blood samples. The 3 samples at the very bottom were the only red ones remaining. Then, it killed off anyone who didn't have strong genetics, so all the people without any. Chrome watched as a small amount of black started to form in one of the blood samples. Senku grabbed it and put it under the microscope. It seems like Magma's blood lasted longer than expected. Senku watched as Naruto's blood finally rejected Magma's blood and showed signs of killing it off and replacing it, which just leaves you and Kohaku's blood. Senku had expected Magma's blood to last a lot longer due to how strong his body seemed to be. Naruto's clone scoffed. Still, it was a surprise that both Kohaku and Ruri had blood that was somewhat compatible with his blood out of everyone in the village. Can I have some more blood? Me and Senku want to see if we can unlock the mystery behind his power, and give it to everyone in the village. Chrome asked nicely. Would that even work? Ruri asked Naruto's clone. Maybe. I'm not a science nerd like these guys, Naruto started to say before there was a loud thump outside of the lab. Senku got up, and he rushed out of the lab to see what animal had collapsed. Naruto walked out of the room behind the science guys. A goat. A lot of animals were fenced off. Dang, I had high hopes for the goat. Senku saw a goat collapse and die. He had grafted a tiny, super tiny amount of Naruto's cells onto a lot of different animals, in the hopes of seeing what would happen to each animal. So far, 80 animals had collapsed and died, while 20 animals remained alive, but in varying conditions of sick. Well, a single toad his flesh was grafted to showed no signs of sickness. You're okay with this? Ruri asked him. It keeps them all out of my hair, so why not? Naruto was mostly cooperating to keep Senku and Chrome away from him for longer periods of time. If he kept giving them small pieces of flesh, then they would experiment on it and leave him alone. Maybe they could even find out some drug or some kind of scientific miracle using his flesh. It really was mostly so he wouldn't be bothered though. With the real Naruto. So, Senku says you and I are very compatible and I'll bet you know the reason why. Kohaku had found Naruto in his hiding spot. A tree in the middle of the woods. Compatible. Our DNA or whatever. Kohaku didn't know what those guys were talking about. But Senku just asked her to ask Naruto if he knew anything. Apparently, she and Naruto held a high genetic compatibility. That sounded like romance talk to her. She didn't know science could decide romance. Blonde hair, blue eyes, same skin color for the most part, and we both have very similar outlooks on life, and very similar personalities. Your hair is even just like mine, all wild and stuff. You've also got a strong willpower, and good genetics. Naruto waved his hand around in a lazy way. Even he could see how similar he and Kohaku were, though she was just less experienced in life and in culture. He was raised in a much higher society than her. Kohaku is just a girl version of what his personality would be like if he were raised like her. That's about the only really difference between them. Good genetics, does that mean you find me attractive? I mean, my opinion doesn't really matter, because you are very attractive, but it's more like you have a really good, strong body and a strong will. Naruto noticed that she had a small prick on her arm from where she had her blood drawn. Out of the 60+ villagers, he only expected 4 would be compatible with his DNA in some form, and it was Kohaku, Ruri, Kokuyu, and Magma, the people in the village who had the most similar traits to himself. Of course, it could be even less. He just confirmed that Kohaku was one of them. And he was surprised her father was not compatible at all. He guessed the compatibility with his blood had been passed down from their mother, not their father. So it's just some science stuff, not romance. Kohaku pouted. She wanted to talk romance. Some people get into arranged marriages to have better kids, but I don't believe in that nonsense. Honestly, among all the women in the village, you would be the one I would have the best kids with, but I don't date or marry for that reason. Naruto humored her. He could see that she only approached him because Senku had pushed her romantic talk button by mentioning they were compatible. Ruri had been sick, but she still had a rather amazing physical body that was packed with some real speed and strength for her size. Were you and Hinata? Maybe not, maybe. All things considered, even parents who should be super compatible don't always have kids who inherit those traits. I like to think me and Hinata were compatible, but since I loved her, our compatibility didn't matter to me. Naruto watched as Kohaku jumped up to the branch above him and looked down at him from above. The sun was behind her head, so he was now in the shade provided by her body. Kohaku went from goofy face to serious face. So Naruto sat up. I know I'm not a replacement for your Hinata, and I know you said I don't owe you anything for Ruri, but you saved my sister. You rebuilt my entire village, and you helped feed my village for the winter. I'm not the chief, and I'm not the priestess like my sister was, but we're compatible. I would like you to fall in love with me, and marry me so that I can repay you for all you've done. Kohaku proposed of her own free will. Her father, her sister, neither of them pushed for this. Only Ruri's Ildren would one day become the chief and priestess since she was the firstborn, while her own kids would just be the backups, in case something went wrong. She held very little status in the village, other than her being a daughter of the previous chief at this point. Naruto smiled, and he looked down towards the ground. So Kohaku hopped down onto the same tree branch as him, and crouched down in front of him so that she could look him in the eyes. That isn't something too. I'm not joking, and I've seriously thought about this for months now. If you're worried about me marrying for love, then don't. I can't see any of the boys in the village as men who I could fall for. I've always seen marriage as just something I would do out of honor, not love. Kohaku was serious with every word she spoke. Is that right? Before the tournament, I asked Chrome if he wanted to marry me on the off chance that he lost and couldn't be with Ruri. Kohaku admitted to something that Naruto had not known. He was completely unaware that Kohaku seemed to genuinely view marriage as something she could do without any love at all. Is that right? Naruto repeated. It's right, and maybe I could fall in love with you. But marrying you is the only thing that I can do to pay you back for everything. I want to help heal that hole in your heart. Kohaku reached out and touched his chest. Naruto's home world was completely devastated. Naruto lost the love of his life. The hole in his heart was something she could try and fill for him. That's so romantic. Gah. Kohaku jumped back when she noticed for the very first time that there was somebody else with them, somebody that she had not noticed before. It was an elderly child-sized toad that was sitting on the tree branch behind Naruto, who had jumped into a visible position. She had a letter in her hand that was for Naruto. Explain. This is Shima, she's one of my I studied under her husband, and she cooked for me while I was training. I just call her Ma Toad. Naruto reached out and he grabbed the letter that was addressed to him. I summoned her just to check how things are. Naruto. The toads told me that you're still alive. The shinobi world is dead. The tailed beasts have been going on a suicide rampage, destroying entire countries, and causing many natural disasters. I tried, and I failed, to save as many good people you would have saved. The planet is days away from exploding, and I managed to take a small number of people and summon animals to one of Kagaya's worlds. Food is scarce, and I'm afraid by the time I sense your chakra, it may be too late. If you get this letter in time, please charge up your chakra enough that I can sense it from one of Kagaya's dimensions. Sasuke. I see. Naruto read the letter. He couldn't do that. Naruto-chan, Shima asked. Why didn't you give me this right away when how many people are left? Naruto asked Shima as he showed her the letter. Just Sasuke, the rest died weeks ago. Sasuke found us toads a new home world, one that was able to sustain us, but the world we were able to survive in was poison to the others. While we survived, the people Sasuke managed to save got sick and passed away. Sasuke was immune to the poison, so he managed to survive, but only him. Shima told him. Naruto wasn't surprised. Okay Kohaku, I'll take you up on your offer. Naruto sighed and rubbed the back of his head. He had expected this honestly. What, really? Kohaku was stunned by that. Well, yeah, you're the only woman I've met so far to treat me like a real person, well, the only woman that isn't taken or a child. Naruto did realize that Suika was a girl, and she did treat me like a person but also like a god at the same time. If he was willing to wait 7 years, then she would be an option, but he just didn't see Suika that way. She was more like a cute little sister than a serious option. I didn't expect you to say yes actually. Kohaku hadn't expected this to play out this way. Naruto really was impossible to predict, because she expected him to put his foot down and just flat out tell her no. Then she planned on pushing more and more, until she would be able to back out of it in a cool way where they got closer as friends. So the offer. The offer is real, Kohaku was blushing as she looked away. She might not have ever expected Naruto to accept her offer, but the offer had been very real all the same. She just thought she had a 1% chance of him actually accepting the offer. Well, I'll accept your offer to be your husband mostly because I think you and Ruri are the only woman in the village even capable of being with me. Naruto deadpanned. If I came inside of any other woman, I have no clue what the chakra in my jizz would do to their bodies. I should actually talk to Senku about that. I kind of need to know if my sperm is deadly like my blood is. Naruto laughed awkwardly to himself. That was another reason why he gave Senku his flesh. He wanted to know if it was even possible for him to have sex with women in this world without his chakra-enhanced sperm acting like a deadly poison for them. He was manipulating Senku with the science of his DNA, in order to get an answer he had no other way of testing out. He didn't want to owe Senku a favor though by asking Senku to research it for him. So instead, he was giving Senku something to research that Senku would be interested in first. Senku was a good guy, but also a scumbag. If Senku believed that he owed him a favor, he would cash in on that favor no doubt. So, Senku owed him a favor right now, and he was going to cash in. Replication of results. One toad was the only animal that had survived the Naruto-ification process and gained Naruto traits without dying or turning into a complete copy of Naruto. Instead, the toad's eyes had turned blue and the color of the toad had turned into a more human skin color. Though not perfectly Naruto colored, it also gained orange markings around its eyes. So, Senku, Chrome, Ruri, and Suika gathered 150 toads. 25 toad a week were injected with a tiny amount of Naruto's blood. And they wanted to see if they could replicate the results of the first toad that had survived the experiment. For starters, blood was more effective than flesh with the charm caused by blood being faster than the changes by flesh. 1 week. A toad would either die within 1 week, or it would survive with changes after the week had finished. Week 4. Week 1 had 3 toads survive, Week 2 had 2 toads survive. Week 3 had 4 toads survive, and Week 4 has 2 toads survive. Senku walked to the Week 4 toads glass container, and he counted the amount of toads that were still surviving and hopping around. He had Kaseki build him 6 glass containers that were made to house the 6 sets of toads, and he had a container that held the first toad that had survived so that he could study that toad in particular more. Week 1 survivors. 1. Blue eyes, no other changes. 2. Blue eyes, orange rings around them, no other changes. 3. Orange rings around yellow eyes, brown toad changed to green in color. Week 2 survivors. 1. Blue eyes, large appetite, increase in growth, orange rings around eyes, signs of intelligence. 2. Blue eyes, no other changes. Week 3 survivors. 1. Blue eyes, no other changes. 2. Blue eyes, large appetite, increase in growth. 3. Blue eyes, no other changes. 4. Blue eyes, increased intelligence. Wah! What happened? Senku watched as Chrome went flying across the tent that they were doing the experiment in, because Chrome had been standing in front of the Week 4 toads, and one of those toads was out of the container. Senku rushed over and picked up the paper Chrome had been recording the results on. He also tried to pick up the toad in his other hand, but the toad grabbed his hand, and Senku suddenly found himself thrown across the tent as the toad gained superhuman strength. And flung him hard enough that he hit Chrome, and the two of them were reduced to a pile on the ground. Ah, sorry. Senku got off of Chrome and stood up, helping Chrome to his feet. Before he rushed across the tent and went in front of the toad. The toad was staring up at him with intelligence and annoyance in its eyes. I'm not touching that thing. Chrome stated. Okay, hey, can I look at you? Senku asked the toad with a wary tone as he offered his upturned palm to the toad. Seeing the way the toad was looking at him, he had a small theory. There is no way, no way. Chrome was shocked when the toad gently crawled onto Senku's palm, and Senku lifted the toad up to eye level and observed it. The toad had understood what Senku stated, and was now allowing itself to be viewed. Senku was taking everything into account. Human-level intelligence, and it understood what I said. Blue eyes, orange rings around them. It hasn't grown any larger, but it weighs more. It has gained more muscle mass, no doubt. It's tracking my finger with its eyes, but not in a hungry way. Senku had seen increased intelligence in a select few toads, but this one was showing human levels of intelligence. Usually the toads with intelligence could just run a small maze quickly, but this one in particular was reacting and understanding human speech. Highly intelligence, more, even likely human levels of intelligence. It also possessed strength that was far beyond what its size should suggest it could possess. Senku gently placed his palm on the table, and he knelt down. So that he was face to face with the toad. He glanced at the other surviving toad, which only possessed blue eyes that lacked intelligence. Can you speak? Senku asked the toad cautiously. Chrome wasn't speaking as he watched the toad. The toad shook its head from side to side, showing that it wasn't capable of speech, even if it could understand their words. That's bad, Chrome shouted with excitement, getting flinches from toads that had been granted increased intelligence all across the tent. Oh sorry. Chrome saw the super toad as he was thinking of calling it glare at him. I see. Did you learn to understand our language by observing Chrome and I talking to each other? Senku asked the toad. Touch my right finger for yes, and my left finger for no. Senku raised his index finger on both hands. Because there was a chance that the toad knew the difference between right and left if it had been observing them and learning from them. The toad touched his left finger. Did you mean yes? Senku asked. The toad touched his left finger again. So how did you learn to understand us? The only humans who are consistently in this tent are me and Chrome. Wait a second, Senku set his eyes and went over what he knew about Naruto's blood from studying it so far. Do you have memories that aren't from you? Do you have memories from when you weren't a toad? Is your name Naruto? Senku asked the toad. The toad hopped over to his right hand and grabbed his right finger. The toad had Naruto's memories, that was how it learned their language, because the toad had Naruto's memories and understanding of their language. Naruto's blood, the energy in his blood, must have contained enough memory that it could overwrite the toad's own mentality. It believed it was Naruto. Are you the real Naruto though? Senku asked the toad. Left finger. So, the toad had Naruto's memories, and considered itself to have the name Naruto, but it was smart enough to know that it wasn't actually Naruto. Naruto's memories and some of his abilities had imprinted on the toad, but it still had enough of a self to understand that while it was Naruto, at the same time it wasn't the original Naruto. That is obvious, right? Chrome asked. Left finger. Whoa. Chrome watched as the toad grabbed Senku's left finger again. It isn't obvious. If the toad has Naruto's memories, then it is Posse. It can't see itself as anything but Naruto. This toad has enough intelligence to understand the difference between itself and itself. He both is, and is not, Naruto. This is Naruto. The toad grabbed Senku's right finger. Naruto it is then. Senku was amused by the name that the toad understood for itself. The toad wasn't happy with the name, but it was fine with changing its name. NCE the original Naruto was still around. Can you do anything else the original Naruto can do? Senku asked. The toad closed its eyes and concentrated. It clicked. Since the toad possessed Naruto's chakra, and Naruto was nearby, it connected itself to Naruto and accessed a little bit of his own chakra. The toad's body changed as it gained a golden cloak of yellow flames over its body. Naruto transformed. It summoned two golden humanoid hands that reached out and picked up both Senku and Chrome, and lifted the two of them off the ground. With Naruto. The fuck is going on over there? Stop that. Naruto cut his connection to whatever was siphoning off his chakra to use one of his abilities. He sensed something had entered Kyuubi chakra mode in Senku's little experiment tent. His chakra in the tent had gained a connection to himself, so he cut the connection. I'm going to check on that later. Naruto whispered in annoyance. What the hell had Senku done? With Senku, Naruto was shocked when the transformation ended and the two hands that were holding Senku and Chrome vanished. Naruto cut him off from Kyuubi chakra mode. Naruto shook his head, before he held one of his tiny hands up. And he created a small yellow Rasengan in its hand to show that even with the cut connection, he still had access to a few of Naruto's abilities that didn't rely on Kurama's chakra. Naruto was a fraction of Naruto when it came to chakra amount. So I have no Sage mode, and real Naruto won't let me use Kurama's chakra and I can't use 6-path Sage mode. Of course, I'm not the original Naruto. I just have his chakra and memories. Naruto thought to himself, but he couldn't say it out loud. He had access to a fraction of Naruto's abilities, and was severely limited in the stuff that he could do. Poof. Naruto performed the Shadow Clone Jutsu and turned into 11 Narutos in that moment. He could only make 10 clones. I see you really did gain access to Naruto's memories, his abilities. And let me ask you, if Naruto wasn't in the village, do you think that you would think yourself the real Naruto? If you were human, would you think yourself Naruto? Senku was excited as he knelt down in front of the toad again. Naruto thought about it. Right finger. Because it was a toad, and not a humanoid, Naruto was able to recognize that it wasn't the real Naru. Too easier than it would if it was a human. Can I take some of your blood? Senku requested. Naruto nodded. Do you think you could beat Tsukasa in a fight? Chrome asked with a grin. Naruto nodded. That is hard to actually it isn't hard to believe. Senku stared at the toad with his eyes slowly widening when he realized if Naruto was as powerful as he was, then maybe a toad with a fracti on of his strength would also be able to protect him from Tsukasa the same way. He did throw both him and Chrome across the tent with extreme ease earlier, and had human levels of intelligence, along with Naruto's own memories of his strong Tsukasa was compared to himself. How powerful was this toad compared to a normal person? He needed to add that to his list of experiments. Flying. A skill Naru to had when he transformed that was almost completely useless to him 99% of the time because of how fast he could run, and how high he could jump. Why would he need to waste energy flying, when his flying speed was slower than his running speed and when he could jump from the ground to the clouds in a single leap if he wanted to? This is amazing. Yeah, I guess it is. Naruto deadpanned as Kohaku held her arms around his neck. Newly married. The ceremony took all of 30 minutes, but the feast and celebration for Kohaku getting married to him took 2 days due to how excited the village was. He didn't regret marrying her. And he was sure that given enough time he would fall for her the same way she was falling for him. That was part of why they were going on a honeymoon. She wanted to know more about the world. And now that Senku had Naruto protecting him, Naruto didn't need to make any clones to give to him. Naruto had been very tempted to kill the toad when he found out about that little genetic abomination. But let it slide after he destroyed all of his DNA that he had given to Senku. No more Naruto mixed-breed animal monsters were allowed to be produced. So are you flying this low on purpose? Kohaku asked him. Senku mentioned something about humans from this world not being able to breathe really high in the air for long, and that if I'm flying while carrying you, that I need to go slower. Naruto had been given a little advice from Senku about human limits, since he didn't have the same limits as them. For him, he could go to the moon and be perfectly fine. For humans, just exceeding the clouds for too long and too fast could cause them to pass out and die if it wasn't done properly. He didn't know what limits Kohaku had with speed, but Senku told him that if he went much too fast then there was a chance that Kohaku's flesh would be stripped from her bones as all her blood pooled into her back. Going too fast too quickly, for too long, could result in severe injuries and death. As well as permanent damage if death didn't happen. So, Naruto was only going a little faster than twice the speed of sound. So where are we going? Kohaku looked around. Since they were just over the ocean right now, they had breakfast in a place that was really hot, and had a lot of interesting animals. Lunch was served in a place that was on the cold side, even colder than Japan was in the winter. Now, it was getting closer to dinner and her stomach was telling her that it was time to fill it. Land. We're going to try other countries' delicacies. Since there is a human colony nearby, we should see what kind of food they have. Naruto wanted to have dinner someplace where he didn't need to hunt or have Kohaku hunt, if possible. He sensed 3 colonies of humans across the planet when he had been investigating on his own. Even if he went to the one near Japan, he would just be met with more of the same food. He wanted something new. A land with different plants and animals meant different food. Ooh, that sounds fun. Kohaku was excited. Naruto didn't tell her his plans for their dinner stop before now, but he sped up a little now that land was in sight. With her eyes, she could see a large building in the distance, one that was taller than any building from her home village. It took only a minute for Naruto to reach the building once it was within sight. Naruto floated above the area. Whoa! Kohaku stared in amazement as she saw animals she had never seen before. Cows. Oh, they have corn and cows here, that's neat. Naruto noticed a lot of corn and a lot of cows were situated in a farming setup. Naruto noticed a few people around and about, none of them had noticed him quite yet until he started to lower himself and Kohaku down towards the ground. He had no real enemies. Nobody in this world could challenge him in any sort of way. So without any shame, Naruto's feet touched the ground right in the middle of their camp. Gunfire went off. Ah! Kohaku covered her ears in shock at the loud sounds that were going off all around them. Naruto moved his hand in front of her face, and several bullets bounced off of his hand. Naruto used his hand to block all of the bullets that would hit Kohaku, any and all of them were rendered useless. His golden glowing body was far too strong, too durable, for such weak metals to pierce him. The people of this world couldn't enhance their weapons with chakra. For Kohaku, she didn't see the bullets. For Naruto, he could see and sense each and every bullet that was coming towards them. He looked around, and he could see 3 men and a woman were firing at him with their guns. The second he had landed, they had registered him as a threat that needed to be eliminated. When a glowing man floated down from the sky, it made sense to view that person as hostile for any developed nation. Naruto didn't take offense to it. They were the invaders. Hold your fire, our weapons aren't working. What did he say? Kohaku didn't understand what that man was saying. A blonde man that was smoking a cigarette, holding a machine gun and aiming at them. She didn't understand the language the guy was speaking at all. Naruto frowned as well. He set Kohaku down, and he saw a crowd was gathering. Let's see, who should I go after? Naruto walked around Kohaku defensively, and he looked at the people who had been shooting at him. He made eye contact with the blonde who had called off the others. Oh, she's got some thick lips. Naruto noticed for a blonde woman and a really muscular tan woman. He saw that a lot of people were just waiting for him to do something. Go get drive. Zeno, I don't think they understand us. I understand you. Naruto switched to English as he dropped a bullet that was in his hand. What? Kohaku asked. When they were firing bullets at us, I was sending out my chakra to touch their hearts. I've been getting the memories of their language. Naruto had connected his heart to their hearts. And through gaining that experience, he eliminated the language barrier once his heart was finished adjusting to the difference in language. Language didn't matter to a shinobi, not after the era of the Sage of Six Paths when he shared his chakra with everyone to eliminate that barrier. Naruto swapped back and forth. Oh, you do now? Yes, and more than that. Stanley Snyder, Naruto pointed to the man smoking. Before he gestured to a large black man. Brody Dudley Leonard Maxwell, and Charlotte Boney, with Maya Biggs. I know the names of everyone who fired a single bullet at me. Naruto pointed to each of the people packing guns. A spy then? No, think of it like a lucky guess. Honestly, me and my new wife are just here on our honeymoon. We wanted to try the local cuisine, care to share a bite to eat? Naruto stated. In a flash, Stanley pulled out a pistol and fired at Naruto. Naruto caught the bullet between his fingers. I see, so it wasn't my imagination, our shots weren't missing. You were blocking them all. Stanley puffed out a breath of smoke when he talked, and he put his gun away. Disarm yourselves everyone, this man can't be killed by our weapons, and if he were a threat, we would all already be dead. Stanley was no fool. Attack any threat, yes. Don't attack something that you can't beat. Really, what do you? Brody stood behind Stanley, before he saw what Stanley saw as Naruto dropped a bullet to the ground. Well, I'll be darned, this bastard isn't just some glowing freak. You really blocked out bullets. Brody started to sweat when bullet bounced off the ground and rolled around. Naruto powered down. Everyone was shocked to see the golden man turn into a regular man. Like I said, me and my wife are just on our honeymoon. We would love dinner and a place to sleep. And as thanks, we get to live. Stanley knew where this was going. A threat. Nah, I'm the intruder here, I'm not angry or anything at being attacked. I'm not going to damage food and a bed for nothing anyway. There are so few human tribes on this planet that it would be a real pity to erase one. You guys don't know the formula to revive stone statues. Nah. Naruto had gotten memories of these people on how none of them were revived using the revival formula he knew Senku had. Okay, how about this, you feed us, and oh, how about this? Naruto walked over towards a statue that was half buried in the ground. Naruto placed his hand on the statue. Crack! The stone covering on the statue shattered and a living person was revealed inside of it, and that person passed out from being overloaded and forcefully awakened. Everyone was stunned. I can give you options. I can either give you a hint about how to revive people on your own, or I can revive 20 people for you right away. I don't know the exact formula for reviving people like Senku does, but I do know the ingredients. Naruto had seen Senku make the stuff, well, a clone of his had seen Senku make it. He knew it was made of nitric acid and alcohol, but he didn't know what the exact percentage of each ingredient was needed for the creation to actually work was. Get Dr. Zeno. No need, I came when I heard gunfire. And I witnessed what this miracle man has done with our new friend here. I've also heard his offer. I have many questions for him. Zeno came out from behind everyone and approached Naruto. Evil scientist vibes. This dude is creepy. Kohaku commented. Oh, creepy am I. Zeno spoke in Japanese. Stanley, please prepare our lovely guests a comfortable place to sleep, and get them some dinner. Zeno was more than happy to request. Stanley nodded. It was the only real option. If guns failed, they were out of options. The end.